Should be live again here. So if you guys can type some questions or just type anything in the chat, we'll see if the chat's working this time around.
Giving it a tentative take 2. I'm still getting an error message on my phone.
Oh my God. Oh, Radazor, we got it.
Oh, boom.
Okay.
Sweet.
So that happened for like no apparent reason at all. For the exact same settings now. So it didn't work on your phone when you tried it?
Yeah, I don't know why though.
Okay, interesting.
Everyone else seems to be fine.
All right, guys. Thank you all for joining us today. If you guys want to start asking us some questions, we'll jump right into it because we're running 32 minutes late. a neat 32 minutes. Just like, so here with Joe today. Love Joe, big fan of Joe and his channel Omnipoke. You guys you're already probably subscribers of his and watchers of his content. A lot on the playability side for sure. Mm-hmm. But how much are you doing on the collector side of thing on videos? I haven't checked it out in a little.
Every now and then I'll sort of just weave one in. I'm planning on doing a collection video pretty soon just because I'm moving house.
Yeah.
So it's just all in one place, which is coincidental, which will be fun. Ironically, my investing guide is actually my most watched video in 5 years, which is so weird.
It's a great video. I recommend every time someone comes to me and says like, what should I watch or where should I start? I just got in. I send them to that video.
It's just mostly basic stuff, but I think it's a decent video,
you owe me at least 20 views. You owe me at least 20 views from those recommendations.
But yeah, so most of my content is just playability, and especially when a new set's around, that's when the channel really picks up, because it's all about the new decks and the new stuff that's on the block and giving people a starting point, really. Mm-hmm, that's when it really kicks on, and then it kind of peaks and troughs. It gets around this time of year, less people are watching because it's all towards the end of the format, so everyone knows what's good pretty much. Mm-hmm. So they don't really need much help or direction. So yeah, right. We're getting back into the interesting stage where Battle Stars is on the horizon.
Mm-hmm. So, so Joe is super knowledgeable, certainly on the playability side, has coached, for those of you who don't know, mm-hmm. has coached players, has a lot of friends who are competitive players. But Joe also has a big collection and stays pretty up to date, I would imagine, pretty engaged in the market. I know you're here most Sundays regularly. I know you watch so many channels. And have a great knowledge of and you watch a lot of small channels, which I think is interesting, and I do too, to kind of see what's going on in some of the lesser seen places and what people are talking about. So, so guys, ask your questions. Certainly on the playability side, generally we don't talk too much about that on the channel, but we're going to do mostly, I'm sure, collector questions, investor questions, finance questions, and Joe is also, I think, a great person. Is definitely a person who I would listen to on that side as well. So I'm just going to grab one thing. Let me pull up the first question here, and we can get started. Actually, can you read it, Joe, and start?
We go into the. So I go to the very top.
Yeah, and I have to quickly do one thing for the video.
Right. So Nick Perini asks, hey, Pokenomics, I've been following for a while. What do you think of team up boxes hitting $700+ while Tag Bolt, the Japanese equivalent, are still at 60? Are they just holding English?
What do you think, Joe?
So I think in general, Modern is pretty overrated, is my general opinion. I think a lot of people are buying it not to open it and just to keep and hope that it continues to go up. Team Up does have some great cards in it, obviously. It's one of the better sets, I think, for collectability. Some good pulls in there. $700+ I'm still staggered by. And the disparity between $60 and $700 for being more or less the same artwork is quite surprising to me. Shows you just how much more of a demand there is for English in general, I would say. But yeah, that price difference is still probably alarmingly high, to be honest, for what you're actually getting within an English box.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I think you're hitting on the type of stuff we talk about in this channel, right? Which is, we're trying to do two things. One, we're trying to predict what is happening with Pokemon in a broader sense and comparing it to other hobbies. But then the other thing that's really important is comparing cards and sets and things that should have some sort of relationship, we would think, but they seem to not, or the relationship seems so far off. What is happening here? So when I hear that question, my immediate thought is it's interesting that sets like CP6 or sets, are selling for more than the Evolution's counterpoint. Whereas there are other Japanese sets that have similar cards that are selling for a lot less than the English. And so it's interesting why that happens. I don't think that there's really a great explanation, a rational explanation to justify it. I think a lot of people are buying off of price memory, and there's a lot of people who aren't sure what to buy and what they like, and they're kind of all over the place a little bit here. And so I think that what you're doing is excellent, which is like, okay, this doesn't seem to make sense. Why is this such a difference here and not a difference there? Yeah. And then I think you have to decide, where is the issue? Is the issue, that is this the correct thing? Because English should be, and is going to be going for this much for these types of sets versus, might be happening on a CP6. Now, of course, a big difference is that a CP6 we can say is a specialty set, and that there's something these Japanese, the specialty sets on the Japanese side tend to do extremely well versus some of these other things. But it's very strange. I don't understand exactly who are the Japanese collectors right now, who are the English collectors, who are doing both. It feels just kind of like random and haphazard and frantic to me. So I think there's a lot of risk in trying to predict what should the ratio be between English and Japanese right now, and where that's going to go. What do you think, Joe, about all that?
Yeah, I mean, for Japanese, personally, I normally only go for Japanese when it's only possible to get it in Japanese. There's some exceptions to that, but typically if I can get it in English, I would prefer it in English language.
Yeah.
Now for some more vintage stuff, I still prefer having both sometimes, but for modern, personally, I don't see a big pull towards getting the Japanese variant outside of just wanting sometimes a cheaper alternative that's fun to open.
Yeah.
So I don't really see it being driven up massively because I don't think it has that same collector value.
So that right there is how most collectors have certainly felt before this year, is what I would tell you guys. So most people were English collectors who liked the Japanese, particularly, as Joe said, when there was unique art. So they would go for Versus series, that like they would go for these sets where there was art that they couldn't get in the English, but when they could get the English, they would go for the English, and that's why that price was generally higher. Also, there are many reasons which we've talked about in terms of, difficulty to grade, difficulty to pull the card, how many might exist in the world, those types of things. But what we've been seeing, this year is some interesting ratios between vintage Japanese, set cards, WotC set cards and English set cards. And it's possible, it's such an unestablished market, and people's opinions are so unestablished, and there are so many new people who I don't even think know exactly what they like or what they want, and are probably going to figure that out over time, that it could shift, but I think that this is where being a collector really gives you an advantage of trying to predict the long term. It's like, what's going to hold value, people are going to like you have to, at the end of the day, the hype and the driving prices, it's like Joe really likes his cards, which is why he's not selling it. There has to be that connection, and if you don't have the connection to modern Japanese and you're just buying it because you think, it's going to go up or it should be more valuable compared to the English, but you don't even really like it. It doesn't really have that much value to you. That's a problem if everyone feels that way in the long run. But there may be a bias against Japanese cards, and people actually may view them over time more as the originals, may connect to them more you know, and I just don't think we know the answers to that. It's an interesting thing in Pokemon because the original is Japanese versus if we look at, you know, Magic the Gathering or, you know, or something else. That is going to be interesting to see it play out over time. And I don't think we know.
Yeah, the only real big pushback so far has been on Japanese base, where it's pushed back in a big way this year.
Yeah.
I haven't really seen that same pushback in other vintage Japanese just yet, but we'll see where it goes, really.
So there was no market at all for like a lot of the Neo Japanese holos at all. And now there is. So it has grown, but the prices are still pretty low. But I was buying a lot of those cards in PSA 10 for $9 in like PWCC auctions. And I was just buying all of them because I was like, that doesn't, like, this card should at least be $25.
Yeah.
This is like a 20-year-old card art of like a thing that we love. And it's cool to have the Japanese. I like it enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So at that price point, I was like, okay, this is stupid. The guy's like losing money on this card. He got a 10 and he lost money on it from like the grading fees. And I'm able to buy it. Like, why did it even grade it? You know, these types of things. Yeah. Very odd. But so a lot of those cards have gone up like 8 times, 9 times in value, but are still very cheap when we compare it to like Japanese base set Charizard, which didn't one sell for like 10,000 or something recently? I may have that number wrong, but you know, somewhere, you know, that is really in terms of like the has a huge value, even as compared to a lot of WotC English Holo first edition cards, whereas most of Japanese is still quite a bit lower in value overall. Anything else on that point, Joe? Shall we go to another question?
One thing that makes sense for me is why Japanese potentially alternatives are cheaper is that the people who actually opened the packs, you get 60 packs in a box, and you are pretty much guaranteed to get duplicates of whatever you have. So you're more willing to part with those cards like straight away. Yeah. So you're going to get like 6 copies of certain cards. You need to get rid of 5 of them. So some people are just trying to, you know, get what they can for them and be sort of less patient on that front. So that could be a reason why, historically, at least, we've seen lower prices on those.
Yeah, and you know, and I know at least anecdotally, and from other people that I know, it's much easier right now to find even gem mint quality Japanese holos than it is even like unlimited English.
For sure. They just last better.
Right? Yeah, they last much better. You know, they were maybe taken care of, you know, who knows, but certainly they last much better. You know, you don't get the same whitening issues for sure on the back, or the extreme whitening, or it doesn't look nearly as bad, at least, even if there is some damage there. And so that's another thing to really think about, is that as people kind of more and more collections come on the market, there's a much better chance that people's childhood Japanese cards are going to last and be a 9. From my anecdotal, from just my sort of experience buying collections, than it is the English ones. It's very, very rare that that English childhood cards stay a 9. From buying lots and lots of collections it's very unusual. And we're talking about, you know, holos at least.
Sure.
Adam says, "Hey Jake and Omnipoke, I used to watch your Pika ROM deck videos last year.
That's awesome.
My daughter went to regionals."
That's awesome.
Very, very cool.
Pika ROM is still the best deck in the format. So you've missed nothing, basically.
You know, and going back to that first question just for one sec, you know, when we see these types of huge movements and kind of irrational price points from a collector's perspective, that's evidence of bubbles. That's what speculator bubbles are. So I wouldn't let people not like deter you from that, from seeing that very clearly. For all of you out there who are investing and collecting, you know, it's very dangerous to buy with hype. And when I'm seeing, the biggest mistake I'm seeing is something sets a new price and then everyone, or a lot of people say that's what it's going for now, that's what it should go for. And it's incredibly quick to sort of accept that, you know, and then be willing to pay it for fear of missing out that it's going to go higher. And I'm seeing that just happen over and over and over again with people. So probably not as much as for people who watch this channel, but if at all, but all right. Seeing a lot of familiar people. Great to see you. I'm sure you recognize people too, Joe.
Yeah.
We're kind of a little bit of a community here where we all hang out on Sunday. It's the same group. It's nice. Sometimes I like going back through the chat afterwards and seeing because people have their own conversations, and so it's great to see. Ricardo N says, thoughts on battle styles, both playability and artwork. Thoughts, Joe?
Just to get playability out of the way, I think the Rapid Strike Urshifu is incredibly strong and is probably going to warp the meta around it. So that'll be an extremely playable card. Much better than the single strike build, which is going to be hitting a lot of damage, but it's going to be really hard to set up and slow and stuff. Whereas the Rapid Strike is going to be the face of like 5 different decks, probably, at least from what I've seen so far from Japan. So that's like the flagship card. I really like having single strike and battle strike types of cards for the game. They bring some cool mechanics, and it might be something they carry over for like 1 or 2 more sets. Depends how they're going to do it, because Battle Styles is basically in line with one of the DLCs from the video game. And there's a second DLC package, which is the Crown Tundra, which is, probably coming soon. So I imagine it's only going to be, it might be 2 Japanese sets for us and 1 English, or it could be 2 English sets. I'm not sure how they're going to do it, but having that small little package of cards historically is really cool, because there's been eras like SP era in Diamond and Pearl, and there's been the Plasma era in the Black and White series, and they normally create some fun formats. So I'm excited for it, and I've already started testing that format, and I'm enjoying it a lot. And then artwork, I love the alt art Urshifus. Both of them look amazing. I like one of the alt art Urshifu VMAXs. I really like the mustard supporters. They look amazing. They remind me of like One Punch Man scenes or something like that, or something from Hunter x Hunter, those sorts of animes. They just look amazing. Nice. Maybe even some Dragon Ball vibes in there as well, where you get the topless guy just hench, the really old guy or whatever. So yeah, there's some cool artworks in there. And I really like Empoleon as well. He's like probably top 5 Pokemon for me. So getting a nice alt art of the Empoleon is going to be cool. He's doing a cool pose.
I do too. I love Empoleon myself. I'm still looking for that like level X Empoleon in 10. That's been such a hard card to find. That is one of my favorite level X cards. And particularly I like the set one a little bit better than the promo one. But I like
interesting. I prefer the other way around.
You prefer the promo? Good.
I like the action
I'm not in competition.
I like the slice. Yeah.
You like the slice. Yeah. I've always been, interestingly, and I had this conversation with Rafi, I've always been a little bit more drawn to set cards when, as a collector, unless the art on the promo stands out a lot more. It's a complete bias. That's not investing advice. It's just something because I like opening the packs and finding and completing sets. I think it's like, just as a kid, I don't know. It still gets me.
I had like a minor theory that they intentionally in the Diamond and Pearl era, I much preferred a lot of the promo cards. But then like in later sets, I liked them less than the set cards, and I think it could have been a change in their marketing to intentionally make the promo look worse than the set card, because it's a cheaper alternative, but it looks yucky. So it's like a player's version, essentially, just getting a cheaper promo. I don't know if that's true. It's just something that's all my own opinion looking at the promos. Now, since then, they've done some really amazing like tag team tins with the alt arts, and they're like way better to look at. So, but I definitely think in like the Black and White and X White era, they intentionally made some bad looking promos, or at least none of them ticked boxes for me, at least.
Let's see here. Oh, and if everyone can take a moment to like this video, this is what I'm starting to do on the channel now, Joe. Everyone can take a minute to like this video so that it can get out to more people who may be interested in joining the conversation and watching us, and take a second to subscribe to the channel as well if you support and like what we're doing here. All right. Oh, one thing I want to mention towards the beginning of this, and I think I'm going to make a video on this too. I am going to start a Patreon. I'm going to start a Patreon, but I'm going to do all donations. That's my plan, Joe. At least to start.
Nice.
And the one pro I'm going to give, and give me your opinion on this, Joe, and I love to hear people's opinions on the chat too. The one thing that I will sort of give to people who do decide to donate is they can ask me questions beforehand, and I'll make sure that I answer those at the beginning.
I mean, that's a great idea.
What do you think? Because, I want to make it free. It needs to keep being transparent and free, and we don't want to lose the feeling of like this free chat that anyone can join every Sunday. Mm-hmm. But I'm thinking that it will help structure it, and then I'll be able to get paid for some of my time, even just a little bit a month on donations. The one downside, the obvious downside, is that people who don't have the money to pay, and please do not pay if it's not like very comfortable. Like if you're sitting there like, I probably shouldn't do this, do not pay me money, because people are going to be, we're all in different financial situations. But what I will say is that, if you can afford it, if you have been enjoying it, and even $1, $2, what I can try and do is make sure I get to your question and we can start with those. The one downside is that people who can't afford it, but who would really want to, won't be able to get their questions answered initially or immediately, but maybe we can get to them throughout it. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I don't even think I would worry too much about missing questions. I know you always just, by whatever reason, we get caught at the top of the chat and then we go to the bottom. Normally some questions in the middle get lost or whatever, but
yeah, it's
even just giving you just some prep time. If you look over the Patreon questions, it gives you prep to not give someone an answer that you just say, I need to do more research on it or whatever, or I'm not an expert in that field. It can give you that day or two prep time to just brush up on something to give a more detailed answer is good value, I think.
That's a great point too, because right now I do not, I do my own constant prep in terms of just following the market for basically myself. Mm-hmm. But people do ask like very unique questions about very like niche things, and it's
a broad subject with very specific.
It's like I'll know the card, but I don't know exactly what it's selling for right now, so it's hard for me to answer that specific question. So that's a good point too. And I get a lot of Instagram questions that I am answering, but this will be a good way that I can actually answer them publicly, and they can help a lot more people with that. Although I do know that some people don't want the answers to be public, which I get. It's a competitive. Listen, there are a bunch of smart people who are watching this channel who are savvy and trying to make money here, and don't want other people to know, but I think that the focus of this channel really is to share and cooperate, and I don't know. It's a tough thing. I get it. Trust me, I get it. There are things I don't want to share that I do sometimes, and I've hurt myself. Dragon Ball Z has quadrupled in price. And I didn't even get close to finishing what I wanted, and I would have liked to buy a lot more, and I imagine me talking about it had some effect on that tiny niche, amazingly undiscovered, underdeveloped market. And people in the market are like, what is happening? Oh my God, it's crazy. So and I haven't even I've given no details about it. I've just said that I like it, so I haven't even set, but I think too, hopefully I haven't had too much of an influence, and I was just extremely smart and right about that market. But
you're just bidding against radar now. That's all it is. He's just bidding each other up.
Yeah, I'm not buying anything because it's I've already been priced out. It's Pokemon all over again. No. Luckily, I made a lot of damage. I think I bought I have a $60,000 collection already in DBZ. So I made a lot of damage, and that is for DBZ. That's a lot. For Score, that's a lot. For Pokemon, that's one card depending on the card these days. For DBZ, that's most of it. Which is also what's cool about it is you can actually collect DBZ and get most of the chase cards still. In Pokemon, it's why people need to niche down. It's unless you're multi-millionaire, you just can't achieve the types of collections that I would have wanted.
Yeah, you have to be happy with just crossing off one line a month at the moment. which doesn't feel great.
All right, Jordan says, hey guys, Jake, love the stream. What do you think about XY low pop PSA 10s? What will they do in the future? What are your thoughts, Joe?
Similar to what you said about Neo-Japanese, is that there wasn't really a market for these for a long time. So I'd definitely be concerned about population increases. I think the only real 10 populations you could look at with any sort of validity would be like Flashfire Charizards, stuff like that. It's got to be things that were already really popular to give yourself any idea of what population is of 10s. XY's printed a lot less than definitely Sun and Moon and Sword and Shield sets, of course, but you know, when there isn't a market for it, there's no reason to have sent it in and spent money to get it in a slab. It wasn't really like, they're all modern cards, so they probably would have been sleeved and top loaded anyway, so they're just as safe and just as protected as they would have been in a slab or out of a slab. So there's only recently been incentive to grade if people want to move their things now. So the population will only be people who were getting it to grade for themselves for their own purposes, and now there's different incentives out there for the cards. So I would be wary of calling anything a low pop XY card, to be honest, because the population could change. It could like quintuple or whatever within the next year. So
yeah, I mean, off the top of my head, I would imagine the most filled out ones are going to be, you know, Flashfire, kind of full art Charizard, you know, it's a big
Evolutions,
one.
obviously.
Evolutions, yeah. Evolutions is almost like its own thing. That's like it is XY, yeah. But it's like, yeah, I saw, and I did an interview. I don't know if you saw it on PokeNav's channel.
Yeah, I saw it.
which I did this week, and really nice guy. You know, him and I disagree pretty you know, on a lot of things, and I think he's a lot more bullish on, seems to be a lot more bullish on the demand, and that these prices are going to sustain themselves on a lot of these modern products, and either isn't as concerned about the supply. You know, I'm not exactly sure, but what I will say, great dude, really enjoyed his channel. I do think you guys should support and subscribe what he's trying to do. He's giving his opinions on the market, sharing, and he's, you know, he was very, to his credit, and I said this in the video, you know, he was so early on that evolutions prediction, you know, I mean, yeah. So, but I bring that up because in that interview, I talked about that Mew from Fates Collide, like a PSA 10 regular holo, you know, we're not talking about the full arts. We're not talking about the secret rares from these sets. Regular holo sold for like $370 in PSA 10. And it's just like, and I said in that interview, you know, there are hundreds of thousands of Gem Mint, you know, copies of that. Probably, we have no idea. Maybe it turns out to be like the hardest card ever to grade, like you know, but like, you know, it's very, that's a really good example here of like, and I really outlined it in that video, but where a new person could be a very smart kind of investor, but not understand the market at all that they're coming into. Mm-hmm. And so they could say, okay, Mew's very popular. And I see this a lot. And this is the type of stuff that people do. They're like, they don't know the market at all. So you have to put yourself in the mindset of like what it would be like if you're just coming in. They see the XY boxes going up a lot. You know, they know Mew's a very popular card. They go check the pop report. It's super low. They say very undervalued card. And that's extremely understandable. What they don't understand is that nobody graded that card, you know, because it was worth nothing. It was worthless. It was a 50-cent bulk, you know, that was a bulk card. That wasn't even a card that you could sell for probably $2-3. Maybe someone would buy it.
In its prime, it was a playable Mew, which is a good thing going. It was good going for the population of 10s, at least, because a lot of people would have bought it for playability in the XY era. But you're right. So that's like $2 in its prime, I think.
Yeah, and that is a playability, you know, for collector value. You know, it's a card that you know I recognize just because I have so many of them. You know, so now if I want to, right, I could express grade those, try to sell them. I'd be afraid that was a one-off purchase at that price. But if I see a few people buy it at that 10, I'm, you know, quickly grading them, quickly selling them right now. You know, if I can. So. Yeah. And again, it's staggering because like the people buying that, like if vintage was going for $15,000, if all of these cards in vintage were going for $15,000 to $20,000, then it would be like, okay, 360 Pokemon's just has an unbelievable demand, and Pokemon just just didn't print nearly enough of any of these things. But for $360, and I said this in that interview, you can still buy like certainly many 9s, and you can also buy, you know, some PSA 10 holo first editions for sure, you know, in some of these great WotC sets, you know, and E series, Neo, you know, so it's that's where
you could buy 200 raw copies of that Mew and attempt to grade the best one.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing. So we're gonna have to see like if the raw copies move. So this is part of what I also talk about. There's a grading mania that we're having, you know, where people are really, really overvaluing grading and the amount that grading matters for cards that are insanely mass produced and are all going to be 9s and 10s. And you know, one stat I want to say here, because we got to pick on evolutions a little bit, because why not? You know, the evolutions Charizard, if we look at that, right, people say, well, the evolutions Charizard, you know, and it sold for 5,000, right? The PSA 10 base set unlimited sold for 10,000. The evolution's selling for half the price. Okay. But people say, well, but the evolutions, we're gonna do a little math, guys. Say the evolutions Charizard is so difficult to grade. It's impossible to grade, and that's why it's so expensive, okay? But if we actually do the math on how many evolution Charizards have already been graded, they're about, you know, 140, 150 or something like that. Unlimited, PSA 10 Unlimited base set has about 400, 500, probably 500 in the pop now, roughly speaking. Haven't looked at this in a while. There have been about 6 or 7 evolutions Charizards graded in the last like month, PSA 10s. If we think there are about 50 million in sales that have just gone through for the $50 million. We're talking about like 50,000, you know, 60,000, 70,000, 80,000, 100,000 booster boxes have just been sold. If we think about if those boxes get opened, how many are going to get graded? It's very likely that pop report will probably go up 20 to 30 times. There'll probably be 20 to 30 times more evolution Charizards graded than there are right now. Like we're probably at the beginning of grading that card. And so So to do a risk assessment here, it's like, well, there's almost certainly going to be less PSA 10 base set Charizards in the world, unlimited, than there are evolutions PSA 10 Charizards when things are all said and done, as long as that set remains valuable. And that's where that argument completely falls apart. Because although it's easier to grade the base unlimited relatively to getting a 9 quite a bit easier, although it's still very difficult, that doesn't matter. What matters is the actual amount of the cards in the world.
Yeah.
And you know, in the long run, if people are rational, you know, and it's crazy to me that if that unlimited Charizard was going for for $50,000, $60,000, and then people were paying $5,000 for the evolutions, it's like, well, I don't think people should be paying $5,000 for evolutions, because I don't even, you know, I see that as a proxy card, and I've been very clear about my views on that. But the math at least makes a lot more sense. You know, and so it's these arguments being made that are just they're not very well thought out. They're like, I get it, they're smart kind of on the surface, but if you actually think about how many that population is probably going to 10x, and the base unlimited will probably only double, you're actually going to have more in the long run of those, you know. So I'm going on and on. Yeah. What do you think of all that, Joe?
Yeah, I just think in general, a lot of people just look at the raw PSA pop and take it for what it is, which is pretty dangerous. I think you've mentioned it a few times. A more important stat is the increase, like per year kind of thing. That's going to be a much more important indicator, especially in the next 2 years.
Yes.
the increase per year is going to show you a much better situation of how much there could be out there, kind of thing.
Yeah. And for these WotC sets too, you know, stuff that I had suspicions about, you know, you guys got to dig in if you're buying vintage into Team Rocket. The rates at some of these cards, like Charizard's going up a lot. There are a lot more of those coming in. You know,
almost all at 4 figures in 9s in terms of population.
Yeah. Go into the Neos though, and they're not, you know, go into the E series. It's grown a decent amount, you know.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, you know, E series has so much lower to start with in a lot of ways, and we don't have to worry as much about sealed product with E series, but we do have to worry more about people not grading those cards and keeping them in collections, the people who had them. And I've talked to some of those people, and so some of those have started coming out, but not a lot. so it's having that understanding is going to matter. The math, it's a supply and demand game at the end of the day. All this noise that you guys hear, all these people telling you what to do, it's the math. It's the math that's going to matter from my perspective. And, we'll see, it's the math that's very much going to matter. But of course, on the demand side, there's a ton of subjectivity. But, and so we're going to have to see what all these new people coalesce around. It's like, and I think that's where I get really anxious about predicting anything short term, is it's like there's so much new money that it can move anything anyway. And like they can just decide like no one likes vintage anymore, and like just like it's like enough of these groups decide that, these crazy irrational things to me. And so, but if you have the money to hold your collection and I think you're going to be good. I think you're going to do real well relative to, now how Pokemon does overall is another question. I don't know that. We could talk about that, but relative to these other sort of items, you're going to do really well over time. All right, let's get to some questions here. Try to go a little bit quicker here. All right. GeorgeBot says, "Hi, Jake. Can I ask what's your opinion on the GameStop craze? I know you like to study markets. Have you looked into it much? And what's your thoughts on how it will play out?" Have you followed this at all, Joe?
Very lightly. Yeah. I've watched a few videos on it. I've sort of done the whole like clickbait of like what's going on with GameStop kind of videos just to get a little insight into it. So as far as I'm aware, it was just an extremely heavily shorted stock, right? And people on the Reddit group sort of targeted this as an opportunity for them because people have to buy back the shorted stock or something like that. I'm not super into the stock market, but
most people don't know what shorting is or what that looks like, to be fair. Like people know the term, but the idea is basically that when you short a stock, you basically you're buying it. You're like being sort of loaned almost the stock, or you're given the stock right now by this broker. And then in a week, a month, or whenever, you have to pay the amount the stock is worth then. So if you think the stock is going to go down, the easiest way to think about it is I'm being given it at $50. If it goes down to $30, I have to pay it at 30, not at 50. And I make that profit. And then I pay the broker or whatever, a percentage or a fee basically for doing that exchange or for floating me that. And so it's just an instrument, or it was a tool that was developed so that people could do more gambling, because all of this is gambling.
Yeah.
Investing is gambling. Investing in companies is gambling. What happened in 2008, 2009, where people were shorting the housing market, all this sort of stuff. It's all gambling on gambling on gambling on gambling. and part of what's great about this situation and so funny is that like it showed like the power of just like regular people basically coming together out of just hatred and anger and irritation at like these hedge funds for shorting things and for shorting companies, decided that we're all going to come together and we're going to, buy up this stock and potentially make a lot of money in the process. But at least we're going to put them in a situation where if they were buying, a lot of these companies are buying at $20, now they have to buy, or coming in at $20, now they have to buy at $300 or wherever it's going.
Yeah.
So, it's scary because it is a scary power that all and a truth behind all of this stuff, that if we all decided that fire energy cards were the only card that has any value and just started a campaign and got enough people on it, like we could raise the price of energy for the first time. Like we could cut the supply, so even like something that has terrible fundamentals, and GameStop, to be fair, like the problem with GameStop, of course, is that it's a potentially dying business model because everything's moving online. They have these storefronts on video games. Yeah. And now they have new management, and they're hoping that they're going to be able to change and adapt their business model to make things successful. But clearly the stock, based on its profits, based on its returns, it should not have gone from $20 to $300. So it was done as a intentional sort of, we're just going to raise the price because we're all going to buy it at once, and that raises things, and we're going to keep buying at higher and higher prices, and we're going to ignore the fundamentals or the reality of the company. We're seeing that everywhere. We're seeing that everywhere, to be honest. We're seeing that in Pokemon. People are ignoring, don't know what they're buying, don't understand it. They see someone else talking about it, they start buying it. That's very different than this. I think this is actually more about, or driven a lot by just the anger and irritation and understanding the game, and understanding that like we're not just going to let these hedge funds short stocks, which can ruin the stuff, ruin the companies. And it's basically you're betting for the company to fail and all the employees to lose their job, basically. So that's what's really interesting, though, is the psychology and the power behind that. And also these questions of like, where is all this money coming from? Like suddenly you have so many people who have tons of money to put in Pokemon. You have so many people to put tons of money in the stock market. It brings questions of like, inflation, how much money are they printing right now? Like all these stimulus checks are small, probably just a small portion, but all of the unemployment money coming out, right? There's so much money being printed by the government. Right now we're still seeing okay. Like one important stat is like how much each dollar moves when it's spent. And right now it's like it changes hands 4 times before it goes into, it becomes invested or this or that. Now it's down from what it was, but we're still okay. But when things start opening again and people start buying things again, there might be some serious inflation that starts to show in the economy. We don't really know. It's kind of scary. And so that's also why people are putting things into Pokemon cards, or putting things into products and items. There's a lot of, it's going to be a really interesting couple of years, year to couple of years. And I love the sentiment, and I think it's very true that anything can be anything, and we can manipulate anything, and if we team together, we can move prices anywhere, and we can do it for like a morally good reason, or because we're angry, or because we're fed up with a system that doesn't work for us, or these types of feelings and sentiments. Of course, a lot of these short companies, a lot of these guys who short, they're manipulating the market because they have their people, they're connected to certain people who come on and they say, like, if you're shorting a company, Joe, what they'll say, and I'm not talking about any specific company, so I don't get sued here, but theoretically, they'll have a basically they will plan on shorting a company. They'll pick a company. They'll have their surrogates go out, or people they're friends with go out in the media and push the company higher, creating an artificially high inflated price point for something so that they can then short it. So now they've created the stock's way too high, way higher than it should be, because they've whipped people up into a frenzy, told people to buy. Then they're shorting the very stock that they told people to buy. Then they have people come out saying it's way overinflated, tanks this, brings the stock back down. They make huge profits. And the problem is they're contributing nothing. It's gambling. So they're taking large amounts of money out of the system. Companies are dying in the process, are being hurt in the process. And it goes to a really good question here, which we should get to next, which is, what is all of this going to do, in the Pokemon world, and I saw a question somewhere about like the confidence issue. Like if people, like tons of people get burned from this, or tons of people, they don't realize that a lot of that activity and a lot of speculation and buyout groups are happening. I had a guy contact me telling me in detail about his buyout group and what they're doing and what they're targeting and why they're doing it right now,
Wow, interesting.
And setting up things where like you can pay $20 subscriptions, the same things that happen in Bitcoin. Pay a $20 subscription to be in this group, to get the info. We're all going to buy together. The exact same thing that happens in the stock market and crypto is in this space. And that is definitely having some of the weirdness and the wildness and the irrationality we're seeing is being caused by that. And then people seeing those prices going higher, and average collectors then believing that, then paying it, sadly and unfortunately. So it's often the people who don't know that that's going on or don't believe in the manipulation that are the ones who actually get hurt, because the people who understand the risks and know when to get out and sell. And I said this in a conversation with like Gary King Pokemon that we had. My fear is that it's the collectors that will get hurt. particularly the newer ones, because they're buying things that they really love. They're having fear of missing out, that they're not going to own their cars that they love. And they won't sell when they need to sell because they'll have like the emotional attachment, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a long-winded GameStop and into Pokemon, but
the only other thing I know about the GameStop thing is apparently Michael Burry, the guy from The Big Short who did the housing market, his largest portfolio position was GameStop, right? So he's made
I didn't know that.
He's made like a huge chunk of money again, and he sent out a tweet being like, "This is ridiculous. I didn't even want to win like this. Like, none of this makes sense."
That's hilarious. Well, there's this whole fad happening now, this social media investing, which is people not looking at fundamentals of companies, but just looking at social media traffic. And wherever there's a lot of social media traffic, they buy into that without even understanding anything about the product or the company. And that's
the dumb money model, right?
Yes. And that is what is a bubble. That is the definition of a bubble. When people are buying something, not looking at the fundamentals of what it is or if it should be valued but are just buying it because it's high. So massive bubble alert, guys, in all sorts of sectors of the economy. There are people putting lots of money into things that they don't understand, that they don't value, and they're just doing it to make money and because other people are doing it, and that always happens. But with the Fed, keeping interest rates low and them printing more and more money into the economy, like it's creating probably more and more of a bubble that's going to be really bad for the economy at some point, probably. But they may keep it, going for a while. And then the hope is that enough of that, it's going to create enough activity that the increase in GDP or growth will like help offset some of the issues we may face. Like that's hopefully Janet Yellen, that's what they're trying to do here. That's what they're thinking. So it'll be interesting to see. US stuff. I'm sure it's been interesting over there. Do you follow politics over in Europe?
Yeah, of course. There's a ton of EU politics going on right now about the vaccine and stuff. That's really bad on the. So obviously the UK has just left the EU, and there's some horrific things coming out about the EU trying to stop the UK pumping out the vaccine in parts of Ireland because it's part of EU. So they want the UK part of Ireland to not get the vaccine until the rest of Ireland get the vaccine at the same time. It's crazy. And I check interest rates every day because of my job. I work in accounts, and we have US suppliers for almost all of our products. So we're a distributor of antibody products, and so I'm always looking at US dollar against the pound. So I look at that all the time, and then I get a ton of like reports in of like what's expected to have made these up or down trends of the day before kind of thing. So I look at that quite a lot.
So much information in the world from every country, from every corner, and all sorts of different things. It's a lot to take in. It's part of why it's so hard to determine, because so much affects markets. That it's like you have to become now like a immunologist expert to like like predict like when we're able to open the country back up so it's talked about. Like it's just like more and more levels of just like difficulty and challenge there, and it's part of why these things are so complicated. People giving you simple answers and saying that they understand it or they know what's going to happen or that they have a full and we're seeing huge increases basically in fraud right now where I'm seeing all of these YouTube ads, obviously, and they've been there a lot for a long time, but, telling you that, I can make it 2% a day forever, these types of things. Oh yeah, please sign me up, because if I can make 2% a day, I will have all the money in the world in like a few years, literally all the money in the world. So it's, and that they have a system somehow that like, I have a system that somehow maps out everything in the entire world to determine everything. But I'm on YouTube instead of, instead of owning Berkshire Hathaway, like Warren Buffett, it's be careful. And smart people know how much they don't know. And it's always a good check when you're listening to people who are very smart, someone like Rafi, my partner on this channel, very, very smart guy, very honest about what he knows and doesn't know, and has a very clear understanding of it and the limits. And that is a huge part of actually having an intellect, is because you can have debates in your head back and forth, which are very complex. And then you can see what you don't know, what you can't know, and formulate that all in, I took some like symbolic logic in college, the philosophy of logic. And a big part of it is everything is sort of probability. So when you're doing all of this, it's I 30% think that this is true. I 50%, 70%, like that is the life. It's not, this will definitely happen, this will happen. And when you get good at that and you can put those kind of numbers in and try to make sense of them, you can outperform slightly. and that is what you want to look for in my opinion, and in sort of like sane advice to get through these few years. But do you invest, Joe, in like other things? If you don't have to share. I'm just curious.
Can't say that I do, I'm afraid. I
Pokemon,
just like spending money instead.
Well, luckily you picked a hobby that is near and dear to many people. It was all intentional. Joe was telling me, a few years ago that these cards were greatly undervalued and we were all going to be millionaires, and we all called him crazy. But look at him now.
I am gaining an interest though recently.
Yeah.
Not in terms of like I want to jump in. It's like I'm getting educated at the moment. That's been one of my like hobbies this kind of last few months.
Yeah. I've always been interested in it, and I think that it's, I'm not a financial advisor. We're not financial advisors here, but I think that like the thing that I've always been told and stuck by is I think if you don't have an interest, it's like go for those conservative, safe, larger, instruments that aren't like specific companies or specific assets, and if you're very interested, maybe you can outperform by going more risky and specific, but you have to really, really know what you're doing and have because you're competing against probably a lot of other people like that.
Yeah.
So
or just set it and forget it in a decent place is okay if you don't know much about it.
Yeah. Okay. So here Andrew M, right? So asked, what are the pros and cons of so many uninformed mass consumers entering the market from a sustainability standpoint, in your opinion? So that's a little bit what we talked about, but I'd love to hear, what do you like? And I'm going to answer for both of us that we don't know, like what the stability clearly, but like if you were forced to guess, Joe, what do you think? Like, what do you think that, let's just theorize that, to make it a bit more interesting, let's theorize that PSA starts to get cards back in mass in like about a year, right? So like, so maybe around like September into sort of October, when we saw a lot of the spikes this year, we start getting like a lot more of the product back. And let's say that the market gets flooded with a lot of modern cards that were never really graded before, particularly evolutions and hidden fates and things like that. And people stop, first of all, grading, I think, might become forever changed in terms of the way people see grading. And what grading now becomes, well, grading makes sense when there are only a few 10s in the world, or when it's a hard card to grade. And right now it's sort of like grade anything that is expensive, instead of like, a 9 and a 10 is basically just as good when there are tons of 9s, tons and tons of 10s, it's interesting that people are premiuming that so much. It'll be interesting to see what Black Label does in an environment like that. Does that stay valuable? People are theorizing that that's the only thing that will in modern, some people, and they might be right. But so a lot of people, let's just say that a lot of people get burned. Do you think that these people stay? Do you think these people leave? How do you think it affects the market?
Yeah, I think for sustainability, that they'll just be out for good. I think if someone gets really burnt by it, they'll just leave it like forever, which is the downside, because there's a lot to like about the hobby. And as I love the cards and I love all like so many aspects of the cards for so many different reasons that people are gonna dislike Pokemon for reasons that have nothing to do with the actual Pokemon themselves. They are annoyed about the other aspects, that they spent too much or lost a bunch of money or whatever else. So that's the big con. The pro of so many uninformed people is that they can start getting informed and start getting a greater love of all different aspects of the cards. And even if there are only like 10% of people who have come in the last 18 months in the next 18 months, that's still a net positive, I think, for the hobby. So I think that's awesome. We've already seen a ton of new people, new content around. So there's been a market established just content wise. People enjoy, like, there's a ton of successful channels in this last year that have come out, and it's been a huge gap in the market that's now being filled for people who have genuine interest in it. And it's content, it's like my favorite content to digest. I really enjoy the conversations. It's in many ways brought a ton of the established collectors like together in a lot of ways, and it's got people talking to one another in a ton of conversations. People feel less isolated in that regard as well. So I think there's a lot of positives on that front. And it gives people better platforms to get education on Pokemon as well, which I think is really good.
Yeah, I think like if we look at other hobbies to kind of get a sense of what might happen, comic books could be a good one here. Seeing what happened to the kids and the people who all got burned in and what that did to the overall market. And it did hurt the market. There were some down bad periods where people now were fearful of putting any money in these items.
Yeah, for sure.
So we might see some of that fear. I think another thing we have to worry about is a wealth transfer from people to the Pokemon company and to PSA and the grading card companies. And that wealth transfer is, instead of going to maybe vintage cards or cards that could become even more valuable because the demand will be there, all of that money will be in junk slabs and mass, and the same thing happened in comic books. All the money was in these mass-produced junk comics that no one wanted, that people were, instead of saving up a little bit of money and actually affording the cards that really lasted and financially had the value. So, if it follows comic books, right? Because these comic books going for millions of dollars, some people could have bought, like normal people could have bought those if they had saved all of their money instead of buying all of the mass-produced stuff and then thinking all of that would go up. So it doesn't mean that's going to happen, and who knows. And the thing I'll say is we don't know where we're at in Pokemon. Pokemon still might be in its infancy in terms of size and demand. We also might be in like not the infancy in terms of demand, and in fact it's really overly inflated right now because a lot of the people here aren't even that interested and aren't going to stay that long. As soon as some of that money, so it's hard to know where the golden age, silver age, bronze age of Pokemon will be if there are those things for people who know comic book terms. I think there's a misunderstanding that, golden age doesn't mean the age with the most demand and supply in comics. Golden age has to do with the most valuable, oldest comic books. And really what makes something valuable is a combination of that. It was very popular at the time, but then wasn't kept in good condition. Wasn't either mass produced or wasn't kept in good condition enough for it to, last all those years. Most of those comics got thrown away, completely destroyed, out of existence, that sort of stuff. So, all right. People asking about GameStop. It's going everywhere. I saw Rudy from Alpha Investments make a video on GameStop, and I was like, hilarious. Josh Harris says, how would you go about estimating the value of a modern master set complete with reverse hollows and secret rares? Interesting question.
Yeah. To an extent, I would look at some of the most expensive cards within that master set and try and at least get their individual values sort of jotted down. You can quite easily find non-master sets, just like completed sets of just the regular stuff without the reverses. Oftentimes just on the market selling quite frequently, especially for modern. In terms of how difficult it is to pull a master set or like achieve a master set, it's probably like 2 cases worth of product, something like that, to get a master set if you were to try and solo it. If you're going to try and like trade it for it all yourself, you can do it probably within like a case. So if you were thinking about just doing it yourself, you could do something like that. So I would think it would usually be far less than like the case of the product would be. Yeah, there's different ways you can add value to your master set as well, how it's like presented, what sort of binder it comes in, different things like that. You can change the value of a master set, and who you're trying to sell it to as well, where you're trying to sell it, at what time you're trying to sell the master set as well. There's different ways you can add value to your own, even if it's, you know, the same thing that other people have sold in the past. You can change the value of your own product just of timing it as well.
Yeah, I used to run these experiments where I would sell cards in penny sleeves. I put them on eBay in penny sleeves, and then I put the same like types of cards in top loaders, and then I put the same types of cards in card savers, and card savers make your cards sell more. Because people associate PSA and grading, and so if they see a card in a card saver, they assume it's mint, even though in every description I said exactly what it was and I showed. So this shows you the bias that people have, and you can make. And so to your point, you're so right in how you display. You know, if you're looking to sell, you know, I could do a whole video on, I'm sure, on just like eBay hacks that people would probably love. But I almost don't like talking about that stuff because it's like, it's like you're literally like taking advantage of human psychology to like make yourself more money. I suppose that's what investing is in general. But it's like, it's so like, you know, it's just crazy. I guess as a buyer, a really good lesson is don't fall for that. The reverse of that is you need to ask for pictures of the cards. You need, you know, don't assume that things are mint just because they put them in like nice cases or because it's in one of those like faux leather nice binders that makes everything look so great that I love. Like, you know, I find myself falling for that when I see a collection in that and versus like the, you know, the junkier 3-ring binder. First of all, I'm like, okay, maybe binder dings are going to happen in that binder, which is an actual legitimate concern. Mm-hmm. But, you know, it's like, there isn't necessarily, you know, I've gotten some amazingly beautiful collections in those 3-ring binders, old, you know, minty collections. And then I've gotten some just like junk collections that are like super well preserved in those faux leather binders. So you got to be careful with it. I think in terms of, thinking about the value of that set, you know, Joe hit some good points, thinking about how much it's going to cost you if you want to pull it, trying to think about that, think about how much it's going to cost you if you buy them all single. You know, generally speaking, well, you know, I don't know. It'd be interesting to run an experiment and it might depend on the sets. And this is not my area of like what I've done a lot with, but does the master set sell for more than the individual components or not? Interestingly, base set unlimited PSA 9s were selling for more if you bought them all together.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Okay. Then if you bought them individual, which actually shouldn't, which is completely rational. You could have gone on eBay and binned a bunch of them, or you could, and someone won an auction. 2 auctions went for higher than all of the binned ones would have been, you know? So that's a whole nother issue, you know, and that's everywhere right now. But you know, it just makes me crazy, and I want to scream this stuff at people, like, you know, and people who come to me like the market, you know, like everything makes perfect sense, and people are making mistakes, like just one after another. I see that, but yeah. So it'd be interesting to see how you would do with that, like if it would make sense for you to break up and this is stuff Rafi and I used to talk about all the time. Would it make sense for me to break up the chase cards, put them all together? You know, sell that as a lot, then try to sell the bulk as like a big bulk lot for multiple sets? Or can I make more creating sets, selling those sets to set collectors? I think we're going to have to see how many set collectors there are over time, because you may find set collectors who want to just do it all at once like that. But you may also find set collectors who that's not as fun. It's actually more fun hunting down.
They've opened a box themselves and then they're just looking to cherry pick, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, it's common sense stuff, but it's complicated. You know, there's a lot of thought and there's a lot of guesswork involved. And that's part of why like if you really want to become a serious Pokemon seller, I was doing a lot of testing the market by trying different things to see what got me the most money, to see what got me the most response, you know, and Rafi and I would discuss
that's really cool. That's cool that you were just experimenting with eBay. That's really interesting, because I know old school Pokemon did some great videos on like timing of when to do auctions, timing when to do
exactly all
buy
that
it
stuff
nows,
too.
those sorts of things. That stuff's really interesting to listen to.
Yeah, you have to understand that you are competing. Like if particularly if this is your profession, you are, a lot of this stuff is just, I find it interesting. That's why I was doing all of it, not necessarily to like make a lot of money or capitalize it. My style of investing is I look for value where others don't. And that's how I make money. It's not like it's not like nickel and dime or like figuring out how to like nickel and dime negotiate and get a little bit, there. But if you're working on thin margin, that's a big part of your business,
for sure.
Selling modern. If you're working in modern, like figuring out how to like get, like buy yourself a good camera, get good lighting, look at my camera right now. I look great, buy yourself a really high quality camera and people will listen to you and take you seriously. That's sarcasm for people who didn't realize. But yeah. So a lot of stuff that if you really want to do this, you gotta think about, and if it's hard for you to kind of keep it all in your head, because it's a lot of information, writing this stuff down, is really important. These are the things I have to focus on. You have to set goals. You have to, see what works, what doesn't. You have to be very flexible, being the advantage that you're going to have as an individual over a DA card world is your flexibility. So I bought DA Card World out of their stock completely right as the hype was building, and I've quadrupled my money on all of those cards. And a couple weeks later, DA Card World quadrupled their prices, 4 times their prices in a couple of weeks. And I was able to beat them because I saw the prices go up quickly and then buy out all of their stock. Now, if they had realized that they had been as flexible and if they had had someone watching the market or as quick as me, they would have raised their prices quicker before I could buy them. So with your flexibility and your speed, you can outcompete some of these bigger places in small ways. They're going to beat you at the end of the day on margin because it's all about margin for them and selling lots of stuff. And they have so many cards and they're doing so much, but that's your one advantage. So, and that's where it becomes all about studying the trends, being really engaged in certain cards, watching those pop reports, as we talked about, how quickly they're going up, and then trying to, like find those areas where it doesn't make any more logical sense here. This is going for way more than this, and I should, maybe now is a great time to buy that sort of stuff. All right. VVV asks question, thoughts on Mario Luigi promos versus the Monk promos versus the Scream promos. What do you think?
I don't own any of these cards. I do think they're both pretty cool though. They're both unique in their own different ways. I think the Munch promos are more obviously unique in that they look like no other card, whereas we have had like Poncho style Pikachu things before, but the crossover with Mario and it tying into a milestone is really interesting. So both have cool stories, both cool promotional cards. I don't know what their value differences are right now. The Mario and Luigi cards are more expensive right now, right? I think for the most part in tens. But
and if you sign up for the Patreon that we announced earlier on, to say it again here now that we have more views. First of all, everyone here, please like the video. Second, we're starting a Patreon and subscribe. We're starting a Patreon, a free Patreon. Where I'm just looking for donations. I'm not going to charge any specific amounts. And I'll link that to this video, that the Patreon, and probably do another video about it. But what the advantage you're going to get if you do donate money is you're going to be able to ask your question beforehand. I'm going to do a little bit of research. I'm going to be more prepared to answer a question, and we're going to make sure you get to your question in the lives. Okay. Sorry, Joe, cut you off, but I took that opportunity to continue to plug.
Absolutely.
I'm changing my ways here.
You've just got 2 extra likes right now. It's all working. It's going great.
Only 2. That's ridiculous, guys.
I mean, come on, guys.
154 watching.
There's a delay. It's fine. There'll be more. But yeah, I mean, I'm not looking to buy those cards right now for the values that they're at, but I think they're cool looking and they are unique promos. I don't know the pop reports enough on either of them to tell you which is rarer or anything like that. But yeah, they've had quite a huge rise and they are pretty high profile promos right now.
Yeah, I I don't like the Mario, Luigi, Pikachu promos that much in terms of the way they look. I just never was drawn to them. Whereas the Scream promos, I was very drawn to just purely on art. You know, completely subjective just for my experience. But Mario, Luigi, Nintendo, Pikachu, you know, Pokemon, like we're talking cross collectors.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of cross collectors for that card and people from the Mario Luigi world who want that too creates such a much bigger market for that card that it's a home run. It's an absolute home run, particularly if they don't do a lot of those, and they, you know, really we don't have, you know, if they had tons and tons of crossovers with Mario and Luigi, it might lose a little bit because I'm just not in love with the art on that card. I just never was. Cool. Whereas when I saw those Stream cards, I was like, these are beautiful cards to me. So that's what I'd say. You know, the Scream has a lot going for it too, in terms of very unique, obviously, and interesting. Not sure about cross collectors. I don't think high end. I don't think people not so much with that like art collectors are going to be wanting like one of their favorite artworks with a Pokemon in it when they have no interest in Pokemon at all. You know, unlikely. Yeah. Whereas that Nintendo crossover, you know, is going to hit so many people and going to be so successful. And of course, a lot of people subjectively really love look of that card and really like that card too. Been a great seller, has done, you know, those cards trajectories and movements have been a lot more like moving, you know, steadily sort of up over time. A lot less just like in 1 week
prior to everything
quadrupled. You know, those are better. That's a lot more established and a lot less likely to have huge retraces when you see, you know, price growth, steady price growth like that. You know, people are wanting it for their collection. They're buying it and holding it. They're not doing buyouts. There aren't massive buyouts and people jumping over each other to do buyouts, that type of stuff, which creates the instability of other potential things that have moved up a lot in a week, you know, or the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Jody Matomo asks, my thoughts, has a comment. My thoughts are that Hidden Fates had a small reprint just recently for the sole reason that I think people are having conversations there. Ernesto Alvarez says, hey, Jake, thoughts on the world promo populations? Any guess on the total print run for, say, 05 and 06? Now you're getting into my my area where I've done the most trying to dig for answers. What do you think about these?
I think we've actually tried to speak about this previously. I think you just like asked me this question anyway, just out of like a curiosity standpoint kind of thing.
I did some digging with Joe, trying to get some answers from some of his friends about what they thought, you know, at different years. Did they see differences in how many were given out?
Well, I wasn't playing around 05, 06. I know people who were playing and judging, so I could probably go and ask them to sort of know how many people are at the tournament, how many people were staffing the tournament. I have that information available to me if I actually just wanted to look. So I'm probably not qualified to answer the question. I don't know what the PSA graded populations are right now either. So I'm pretty much in the dark about it, but I could access that information if I kind of wanted to.
Yeah. So the interesting things about these is that it feels very random what they decided to do in terms of how many they gave out. So some years,
the problem, right?
Yeah. And that's the other problem, because some years they gave like 4 or 5 staff cards. I heard to some staff, they would give like, depending on your importance of staff,
different levels of staff.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of variation. And so the best we can do is kind of speculate on that and then watch the pop reports. But one good thing is you can get a range, and a range that you can feel. So I am very conservative, and I go above. I think in my head, how many is it possible of this card that it could exist? And then I add even another 50 for Pokemon just like printing more, or, you know, or another 100 for Pokemon just printing more. And that's how I kind of do my math and try and factor what's happening. The other huge thing to think about is, particularly if you're going after the player cards, well, just if you're going after the player cards, is what nationality was winning, because some people sell, some people don't. And generally speaking, and Joe, you can probably speak more to this too. You know, my understanding is like Japanese players, pretty rare, very rare that those cards come, you know, get to the States, get to the Western world. Do you have anything more to add on that? So for example, like I have finalist stamped cards from years where it was mostly Japanese, and that's a year where it's more likely that that card will not, that might be one of the only cards ever available to Western people. So I tend to jump on those more.
And I think if you're looking at a high grade perspective as well, it's interesting to think about the age of people. The majority of people playing in 05, 06 were more likely younger as well. So I think the bulk of players there was a Masters division, obviously, but I think a lot of were in the seniors division and stuff like that. So, and in 05, 06, the protection of cards was a lot worse. So even the amount that were distributed have a higher chance of being damaged, even if they were protected. Yeah. Now, they are world's promos, so people would have always sort of cherished the card kind of thing and protected it. The 05, 06 promos weren't playable for any reason, so there's no reason for them to take it out of the binder and start shuffling it up and destroying the card in that sense.
Yeah.
So it is kind of like a cherished card as soon as they do get their hands on it, but even then protection was worse and people were kids and stuff, and sometimes the promos were in little packs, sometimes they were literally just handed out on tables from like straight from the judges' hands, stuff like that, to the players and stuff like that. So those are all things that you need to bear in mind. But yeah, if you are looking at getting those promos, definitely asking people who were around is going to be really important at the time.
Yeah, you can ask me a more specific question about it behind the scenes and I can give you an answer, but really quick breakdown of everything. Ready? Here we go. 2004 rarest. They only gave one, and you only got the one that you finished at. That was the biggest difference that year. So there are a lot less of the 2004, extremely hard to come by, very expensive cards, getting anything stamped, even a regular stamped, let alone if you got, staff. Very hard to find the staff, extremely hard to find any of the player cards, any of them. Very, very difficult. And each player card is instead of, in a lot of years, like the 32 is because they gave out, I'm not going to get into it. I made a video on this. You can see on it rather than going through each of those things. But okay, so 2004, 2005, very hard to find. They don't come up on the market often. I'm not sure why it would be harder to find than 2006, but 2006 is easier to find. More have come up on the market the last few years. That's either because more people are willing to sell, more have them have been graded, or something that happened in that. I do have notes on all of these that I don't have up. And there might be a note in there that there was some reason why there were a little bit more 2006 than 2005. There seems to be even less 2007. So 2007 seems to be the second hardest year to find them for whatever reason. 2008 seems to be a little bit easier. 2000, then you've got 2009. Let me try to remember each year. Which one was 2008? I'm trying to remember the art.
Which location it was in 08?
Yeah, what was the location?
I'll just look for you. So I'm not wrong.
I just want to make sure I'm giving the exact reference. I'm definitely right from 2004 to 2007. And again, I have a video where I literally go over this, and my information from back then is still good to right now. It's been solid.
So Worlds 08 was in Orlando, Florida. The artwork of the promo. Let's have a look. That's the one with Krogunk and Boneri with a guitar and a Pachirisu. Okay. It's still a Tropical Wind.
Right. Yeah, so that card has been the easiest one to find of them, but it's really dried out. So a couple of years ago, that was one that was coming up a little bit, and I was able to buy it a little bit more easier than some of the other ones. But since then, that one's really dried out. Frankly, all of the older ones have really dried out. A top 16 from 2006 came on the market like this past week, ungraded, and it sold for like $1,600. So they've really gone up in value. These are cards that are on the move. I think that the Champions Festival ones are undervalued, actually, and have always been criminally undervalued, in my opinion, particularly the higher stamped ones. And people just sell them. They're still selling them. Now they're getting a lot more valuable, but nothing compared to the rest of what they should be compared to like the rest of the market, particularly what's going on in Modern. I think it's absolutely absurd. I honestly believe that people will look, and I normally don't speak this strongly, I think people will look back on these things and be like, what were we thinking and doing? You know, these are like historic items for, from World Championship. I think people have a odd bias against these cards. I'm not really sure what exactly is going on. Be interested to hear your perspective. I think that when we think about, how many of these cards are in the world, I'll go through the full list. Sorry. First. So then we've got like the tropical beaches, the 2011, 2012. They were playable cards, which made them harder to find in higher grade because very few of them survived in higher grade. Then you go into Champions Festivals. The Champions Festival cards are still around today. They're all of the ones from 2013 on. And some of the highlights, interestingly, like the one from Boston 2016 seems to be like a little bit harder to find.
Is that the one with the Kanto starters? 16?
No, that's 2016.
Oh, right.
Is that what I said? I thought it was 2015.
Yeah, you said, yeah.
16? Oh,
Boston's 15. That's the Rapidash, right? 15?
Yeah. 2015 is the Boston. 2016 is the starters. That was the
San Fran.
the 20th anniversary. That one is by far the most expensive because of the art and because it's very likable. But if you actually look at the pop reports and the amount that I've seen, the hardest one to find was that 2015 for whatever reason. But again, it could just be because players are holding on to them. It doesn't mean that necessarily they're rare in the world, that sort of thing. So. Yeah,
I'm just trying to think of the points cutoff of 2015 because I think it was a difficult worlds to get to. In terms of the point cutoffs. So it was probably a smaller world than other years. So it makes sense that it's harder to find, right?
Yeah. And more people got back into Pokemon in 2016 with, and later with Pokemon Go. So there might be some differences there. So it's a lot of research knowledge, talking to knowledgeable people like Joe, who was at a lot of these, these sorts of things, and knows the people who won and who have the cards and that sort of stuff. And, a lot of the players sell, a lot of the players sell. Players have interesting relationships to these. You want to talk a little bit about kind of the differences there?
I mean, a lot of people do still cherish the card. Obviously, it's a huge achievement for any people. I think the trophy is something that I see more people attached to more often than not.
Yeah.
Because just on the day you can get a good amount of money for that card, and you're in history for the result anyway. You're not going to be known for because you got the card in your hand kind of thing. So I do think it's hard for people to sell their card. I know if ever I did well in the Worlds, I would obviously never sell one. And I think the cards are amazing. And it's part of the reason why I still play. And it's what I'm striving for kind of thing. So I think some people are like that. Players, a lot of the time, aren't quite as sentimental about these cards, though. And they think that if they can get a good price for it, they will sell the card for practical reasons because, you can spend on all sorts of other things. We're still, most Masters players, which is the highest age division, are, around 21 to 30 odd.
Yeah.
So it's a really meaningful amount of money if it's a 5-figure card that you receive for free kind of thing, right? So it's not surprising that people accept to sell because it's, really meaningful and life-changing money, really, for some people. It can be a deposit on a house kind of thing. So, it's not surprising that people sell.
So Radazor asks regarding the Champions Festival promos, regardless of the year, do you think there are more staff or top 32? Yeah, so this is another interesting thing is that the staff has always gone for the same value as the top 32 for no reason. No good. So here's the reason why people say. They say it's because people like the staff better because it's easier to collect a staff from each year, and that feels better than trying to go after all of the player ones. For me, it's I want to this was won by a player who achieved something and did something really cool. And that's way more a part of history to me than someone who did anything, or at this place, or just got 5 of them and just fire sold them, I think that the staff ones are probably going to be sold more. I think the players are going to want to hold them on average higher than the staff ones, particularly because they get so many of each staff card, certain people. And so I think that for those reasons, I've always way valued the So I've been a big buyer of top 32s and top 16s, because to me, those were very undervalued and not wanted as much, in some cases, even on the staff cards. In terms of numbers, we don't know the answer to that. You can sit down and do the math. There's some years, and I have it written down somewhere, there's some years where there were likely to be a lot more staff than top 32. There are some years where it might be reasonably close. It's such a guessing game. Like within 500 cards, we're guessing. But all of these cards are a lot rarer, very, very likely a lot rarer than these modern staff Lugia, staff Charizard, Vivid Voltage cards that everyone's paying huge amounts of money for and talking about. And that's why I say these cards are criminally undervalued. I don't know how else to say it. I own a huge amount of these. I will buy them all day. I'll keep buying them. I will own every single one of them if no one else wants them. That's how I feel about them. It's like, I will just own them and never sell them, and everyone can say I'm an idiot and a fool, and I'll feel great because I'll have them all. Like that's, that's my feeling about those types of cards. When I saw them, I knew immediately that was such a great way to get into trophy type cards, rare historic items that were really affordable, and that almost everyone could afford. And these cards still, the staffs, the top 32s, the top 16s, these are affordable cards. If these ever get hyped, you'll never see them. They'll be gone. These cards have it to sort of the modern kind of masses. If these cards ever get really enjoyed and really liked and really talked about on some of these channels, that may never happen. What do you think are the negatives of these, Joe? Like, do you have any negatives on them in terms of like why people aren't liking them?
The only thing that I think not many people see an attachment to worlds. People who have never played the game before, they don't necessarily care about like a person that played well, because they don't even know the rules to the TCG, so they don't feel attached to that. Specifically for stamped cards, there is always the like unlimited version where you just get the non-stamped, which is somewhat
absolutely
anchoring.
But that's the same.
Those are my only negatives, right?
But that's the same as those staff Lugia, staff chart.
Oh, for sure.
Right.
Sure. Yeah, it's incomparable to look at pre-release promos in terms of, because
I definitely agree with that. But then we have to say the same thing about like Unimagic Unicarp that's going for $50,000, and that you can get that card for nothing with the same art. So it's kind of like, I 100% agree. I think that is a knock. But even those stamped Worlds cards, I do think getting one with a stamped Worlds is cool, even if you don't want to get one with a stamped player. I think those cards are really cool, and there's a market for those. For example, the 2004 ones, you could get those a while ago. Now they've been all bought out. So, because people couldn't get the 2004 of a higher, so everyone bought those. So yeah, I definitely agree that that's an issue. I think that but it's strange to me that like people feel a connection to Vivid Voltage. Like, it's a great set. I love Vivid Voltage. It just came out. Like, I don't know. It's just, who's emotional about Vivid Voltage? Like, are people crying, like feeling connected emotionally to Vivid Voltage? I don't know. It's a wacky time to me. I'm not sure. And again, this could be complete bias. And if everyone buys the staff cards and these sorts of things, the value of my collection will go up a lot, because I'm probably one of the biggest owners in the world of these cards. I don't know who else has them out there. I think I have 60, 70. That's probably one of the biggest holders in the world, I would guess, just given how few there are. To go back to the pop reports, a lot of these only have like 1, 2, 3, 4 in the pop. Staff cards having 20 in the pop. That's total. That's not PSA 10s. That's total graded. So, but if these really balloon in value, and you're already seeing more being graded now, and I have friends who are tracking them down and grading them right now. So again, they will, the good thing about them is they always had a decent amount of value. So they weren't like a $1 card that had no reason to grade. So we're not in that sort of category. But when they were going for sort of $100, which a lot of them are going for $200 for some of the rare ones, they were that may not have been enough incentive for a lot of people, particularly players, I'm sure, to to sell them to a collector who then might grade them. So I think we're seeing that transfer right now. And some of my friends are buying them up from the players who actually have them, and they're players looking to sell. And I'm sure Joe could shed some light probably on players, or I know you know, I don't know if you want to say, but in terms of like trophies and other sorts of
yeah, I'm not going to say anything on it.
yeah. But there are people in the world, there are players who, because of the money, that now the increase in money, have more incentive to sell than they did before.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got a super chat here. Any distinction between, interesting, we got 5 dislikes for the conversation on, so people who disliked, I'm interested to know what you didn't like about that conversation.
They've already gone.
Oh, they probably didn't like, they probably own like the staff cards, the staff Lugia Charizard cards or something. I'm literally giving you like great knowledge that very few people have in the hobby. It's just hilarious to me. Like what is the mindset? All right, Sunny Jim.
They just need to make a World's Promo that has a Charizard on it. It's fine.
Is that why? Because there's no Charizard.
Yeah.
Oh my God, the overhyping Charizard and overvaluing Charizard. That's another thing. I don't even talk about it that much because it's so subjective. But do Pokemon lovers really love Charizard that much more than the other Pokemon? I don't. So I don't know. It's strange to me. What can I tell you? Any distinction between, so Sunny Jim gives a super chat. Thank you very much. Very nice. Ooh, one of the dislikes disappeared after I said that. Oh, very interesting how the internet works. Sunny Jim says, any distinction between tropical versus festival? So the distinction is the year. So the modern ones from 2013 up into 2019 are all part of the festival. The tropical wind, although it skipped years and there were tropical beaches tidal waves. Tropical tidal wave. Yeah, exactly. They're all sort of older, even though it skipped a year and went to tropical tidal wave for like 2005, 2006, I think were the top tropical tidal waves. And then 2004, 2007, 2008 were tropical wind. And then I can't remember which one was 2009. Now I remember.
Nine is the Shaman one. The
exactly.
Shaman. Yeah.
The one that I only have one copy of, and it's at PSA. So I like don't see that card a lot.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's why it's not in my head. The 10 then is also a tropical tidal wave, back to tropical tidal wave with the Pikachu. That card really spiked in price. Not the easiest one to find. And then 11 and 12 are the tropical beaches.
Beaches, yeah.
And then the rest are champions. The other interesting thing is that, and difference is that the champions all have champion festival all has champion staff ones, whereas before that they went up to finalist. And that's part of why the earlier finalist ones are, in my opinion, actually undervalued because they were the champion stamp, whereas now they have a higher champion stamp that was added. So that's the other big difference. But that's it. Yeah. Anything else you can think of there, Joe, for differences that's interesting?
No, I think you covered it. Okay. And I think just going forward, it's most likely that they won't make a tropical beach style effect, at least, of a card. They'll try and keep exclusive promos not playable. So I imagine it'll continue to be festival ongoing until possibly it goes to a different country or something like that. So, part of the reason why they made the changes to like tidal wave and stuff was the geographical location in the US. Maybe it goes from a Champions Festival to a different name if it comes to the UK, which was the hope in 2020 and hopefully like 2022, more than likely than 21 right now. So possibly there's a name change of the card, but it'll functionally always pretty much be the same as Festival now, I think.
And now we have 6 dislikes, the most dislikes that I think I've ever gotten on.
I'll just let you keep talking, and I'll just the more I talk, the more dislikes.
It's easy. No. It's fascinating. It's people don't like to be told what to do. It's
because we've talked about a very niche subject for a long time. I think
people aren't getting their question answered. It's ridiculous. People, the entitlement. And I'll just talk about it openly.
This is great for dislikes, by the way.
I mean, listen. Part of the great thing about not needing any money from this or anything is like, my heart is here to try and help people and give you guys accurate information. And I'm on your side. I'm on the collector side. I'm a collector at heart, not trying to manipulate anything. I'm trying to help people spend their money well and enjoy the Pokemon hobby. I think it's why so many collectors are drawn to this channel and feel that and get that where they don't get it in other places. So, I'm just, I because of that, it allows me to not care as much about that stuff. But I think it's fascinating, just the whole psychology, like what videos people like, what videos don't like. I don't know.
It's a great ratio. 82-5 is a great ratio.
I'm such a student of, I'm such a student of, like, one of the most interesting parts of before we go back to Pokemon, of running this channel, has been seeing what people are like on the internet, like what people expect from you, what they don't expect from you. People being upset with me that, like, I didn't answer their thing and now they have to like unsubscribe from the channel. And, it's like, there's this weird sort of, culture that's super interesting. I don't know. I mean, you've been in this space for so long, like so long. I mean, I'm such a novice and a newbie, and it's like me kind of discovering all this for the first time. And like the last like 6, 7, 8 months, I've never done anything like this.
It's super interesting. It is super interesting. The types of people that will comment and do actions over things that you never even thought they would notice. It's quite incredible. Yeah. Gotta love it.
All right. Do some Pokemon here. Why don't you take a look, Joe, in the chat and see if there are any questions that you find interesting or feel like answering.
So I think we've just got to the part of the chat that was like the start of conversation, because I can see a lot of people talking about Japanese centering and card backs compared to English, which was like the start of the first question that we had. So I'll try and get Jimmy Holcomb asks, curious to hear your thoughts on investing transparency with PokeTubers versus stock YouTubers. It's like stock YouTubers are more willing to give options on specifics. I don't know if that's one we need to answer, but I said it out loud, so I didn't read it. I didn't proofread it first.
Ooh, we've got a hater here. I'm sorry. I'm so focused on this now. All right. I need enough.
Are you getting to the bottom? Are you getting to the bottom?
Yeah, I'm getting to the bottom.
Oh, let's go.
We've got a hater. We've got a Kisbo Slice who's saying that, all right, here we go. I want to like them. Difference between them and others is they're not likable. So we're not likable people. Can you tell me specifically what is unlikable about us? I'd be interested to hear. I guess we have a delay, so we're going to have to wait.
Yeah. I wasn't ready to just get blasted right here. I'm in the crossfire, man. Who knows?
Whatever. I don't know.
Other people are just jumping on him now. I don't know if that's great.
No, don't like be mean to him. It's fine. Honestly, like, of course, first of all, who knows who this guy is? I have no idea. But like, people, one lesson in life is that people are going to dislike you everywhere, no matter what your personality is, no matter how likable you try and be or not be, whatever you're like, you're gonna be disliked. I mean, it's literally something I talk about with my friends all the time, about expectations of other people. What I find interesting and fascinating is like learning, like when someone dislikes you, why they dislike you and what it is about that situation. Are they disliking you because, right, they're trying to manipulate some card that I'm talking about or not talking about, or is there something personal, he left the chat.
Blue Goose Collectibles has the best theory so far, because you cut your hair and you don't resemble Garfunkel anymore. That's why he disliked. That's a great comment.
That's a very fair reason. That's a very reasonable reason. I apologize my hair isn't crazy anymore and that I am not wearing I think one time I wore like a turtleneck.
Yeah. Great. Are you going to jump back up to the top, or should we may as well like go back to the bottom?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna skim the chat just to see like what questions, what things we really haven't talked about at all. One question here about DB Cart says, do you know anything about the print runs of the black and white sets? That might be a good question for you, Joe, just because I know you're collecting, you were there buying those sets right when they were coming out. What is your overall feeling about the black and white sets, maybe as compared to the popularity of Pokemon in that time period, as compared to like Diamond and Pearl era, and then XY on sort of the other side?
Okay, so certainly it would go like, if you're doing like a staircase kind of thing, it would be like EX sets, then a step up to Diamond and Pearl steps, then a step up to black and white sets, and then you carry on the staircase for like XY, Sun and Moon, Sword and Shield kind of things in terms of print runs. And the EX series is probably the lowest on that staircase, maybe E series lowest on the staircase of sort of print runs. So it wasn't a particularly high point in the hobby. I don't know like specifics in any way. But my feeling would be that it's more than the Diamond and Pearl sets and less than the following sets, the XY series. XY seemed to be a big jump comparatively, though. I do think Diamond and Pearl compared to black and white would probably only be a small step, and then it would be a large step for XY. Would be my feeling. The start of
that's exactly my sense too. Definitely just guessing, but that's exactly how I would have answered it too, is that there seemed to have been quite a big jump from black and white to XY in terms of popularity, and that black and white was either the same-ish as Diamond and Pearl or slight jump, slight movement, slightly more popular. I think the problem with black and white is the reason I probably know the least about black and white, and I do have a number of the shiny secret rares, which I like from those sets. They were the only cards I went after, is because I didn't like it. I just didn't like those sets particularly. It didn't excite me. That era didn't excite me when I got back in. I think that's very biased and subjective though. And I think that there are people who, and Joe can maybe talk to this too about his experience and people he knows, but there could be really good opportunity. I definitely think there was really good opportunity in those shining cards. That's why I bought so many of them. I'm not sure about like if we're really getting down to like normal hollows, like whereas I see that extending as long as Pokemon remains popular. I see that extending into the Diamond and Pearl era, that the regular hollows from those sets should have quite a bit more value. I mean, if you're seeing Fates Collide Mew regular hollows going for $360 and you can still buy those hollows for $2, $3, $5, $6, not Fates Collide hollow, but you could buy $2, $3, $6. You can buy the hollows from Diamond and Pearl era, or even from Nintendo EX era, early original Nintendo EX era, depending on the thing. That doesn't make sense. There's something going on there.
Yeah, just my 2 cents on black and white. I agree. I really hated the holographic pattern of regular hollows in black and white. The weird, like stripped, sort of, it almost looks like glue kind of pattern for regular hollows. Black and white sets introduced full art cards, which is a big plus for them. And full arts are a huge hit. There's a lot to like there. The secret cards, the secret rares, I don't think they're popular species for the most part. It's like the Chandelier, the Emboar, there's Dust Noir, which I like. There's a few cool ones in there, but they're mostly newer Pokemon, which is a thing going against them, apart from the Charizard and Stoice. But are those XY? Or are those late black and white? I can't remember. They're plasma sets, right?
Those were, yeah. Those sets I'm in love with, by the way, those plasma sets, yeah. I think you're right. I also, the quality of the secret rare isn't as good. They had those like gold, like the look of the plasma ones, I think were a lot better than the look of the black and white secret rares, even though they were also shiny. And the other thing about those black and white and the full arts, and this I know just from talking to other people, very difficult to grade, and that was part of the excitement around them. If you can speak more to that, Jeff, you remember, but that my understanding was that they were,
print quality was not great at that point.
Very bad.
Print quality was poor in Diamond and Pearl. Print quality was poor in black and white. to an extent XY as well. So
Yeah.
I think card quality was kind of at its lowest in Diamond and Pearl and Black and White from my personal experience.
Yeah.
Straight out the packs a lot of the time. So,
yeah. And so the historical quality of having a full art that is actually difficult to grade could be interesting when we look back in
true.
5, 10, 15 years. And that's, so I do own, now that I'm thinking about it, I do own full arts from that era because I was picking them up. Card Rush Inc. was just fire selling them for like $9 in PSA 9. So I just was buying them all because I was like, all right, like I don't even want these cards that much, but at these prices, I'll just soak them all in for like $1,000. I'll own like all the population of these cards in the world. I'll take that gamble type of thing. And it's because I felt like, you know, that now I don't have the better ones, you know, there were some that were always very expensive. I'm trying to remember which ones, like some of the legendary dogs, I think, were quite expensive and so hard to get in 10s. Like you wouldn't see them in 10s at all. Like they would always come up in 9s. Generally cards that I have a lot of are the lesser popular Pokemon, and because those were the ones that were fire sold. And so I'm the type of person who's very conservative. And so it was easier in some ways for me to buy those because the grading price, I was getting them for like below the grading, which to me was like, if anyone ever wants this card, I'll be able to sell it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that just felt like a good floor, you know, less risky than buying a card for $300, you know, when I could at that time buy vintage, you know, WotC hollows. I could get like 3 or 4, 5 even PSA 10 WotC hollows for $300, $400 back then. Just felt like so much money to spend on like a black and white, you know, card just because it was super hard to grade. Whereas $9, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, true.
Graded Gem is here. Nice to see you guys.
How's it going, guys?
Friends of yours, right?
Yeah. I live like half an hour away from them. So were it not for a pandemic, I'd like to think I'd have seen them a little bit more.
Yeah, I got connected to their channel a little bit through one of the videos they did with you that I really enjoyed.
Oh, interesting.
Like really early on, like when I was just sort of started, because you were the first interview we did on this channel. And I think a little bit after that, I, you know, saw you interviewed there, and that was part of why we contacted them, wanting them to come on the channel and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, and obviously James, you know, ZNG, James was one of the first people I got in touch with and became, you know, friends with and friendly with and shared info with, and now works with them. So it's funny how
it's a funny link.
Things go. Yeah. So Graded Gem asks, so will Pokemon stay focused on collectors or players moving forward, especially when competitive play comes back?
It's a balancing act. I think they sell way more products to collectors than players. It's really interesting listening to collectors say that they only care about players and players say they only care about collectors, because I'm kind of on both. I see both sides, and I find it hilarious seeing the argument from both sets of people.
Yeah.
But obviously Pokemon always are doing a balancing act. I think there's been a lot of sets over the last few months which have been heavily catered to collectors, which is cool. I think just technology in terms of how they're presenting cards has improved on and on. I think the look of some new cards look completely incredible with how they're texturing them and stuff like that. So I think naturally the goal for them is to improve the quality for both players and collectors, because, you know, they're making money from both. But there's more money for them for collectors, I would say. So there's more of an incentive to make cards look better for collectors. They've experimented with a lot. They've experimented with set sizes. They've interestingly, in the Sword and Shield block, gone down in set size compared to Sword and Shield blocks. Think about things like Lost Thunder and stuff like that, and some of the later tag team sets where there were monstrously large sets. I think that was a real turnoff for me as a collector. I think it was a huge challenge and out of reach to try and collect that many cards. Some people like that difficulty, but I think Sword and Shield sets are doing a good job right now in their set size. And I think there's probably still a few too many like rainbow variants of cards in like jam packed into one set. It's a turn off for me as like someone who likes to try and complete sets. I haven't tried to complete like a master set for a long time, just by the amount of them that you have to collect, and not necessarily cards you care about. So that would be one of my biggest things going forward that I'd like to see change. Just a more manageable amount for someone to try and, when you pull a case and you still have like, I don't know, like 30 rainbow and full art cards you need to go out and buy on your own. It's not like a great feeling. You're still like so far away from completing a set. So I'd like to think that they take all these things into consideration. But having large set sizes means people in theory need to pull more packs and stuff to actually get stuff going forward. And they're always going to try and cater to the competitive scene as well, because these cards have to have some sort of text on them. Why not make them interesting for people? And the game's doing fine in terms of how many people are playing. I think since 2016, attendance numbers have been increasing until the pandemic, going into tournaments. So it's doing well on that front, I think, which is good to see.
Very interesting. Swami asked an interesting question. What should we think about prime cards like Houndoom or Slow King? 5 primes per box, but vintage. Whereas like Amazing Rares and Vivid Voltage, for example, are only 2 per box. Although I know people have gotten like 4 per box, I've heard in some cases, but at least 2. So what do you make of all that?
So pull rates are pretty easy for primes, as Swami said. I think just the look of the cards. I mean, Amazing Rares do look pretty cool as well. I really like the look of prime cards. They feel more like pulling like an EX card because they have that silver border. Primes seem like a good set to look for because they all look very distinct, similar to how Amazing Rares are. It's just Amazing Rares all come in one box, whereas the primes come in 4 different sets. The Heart Gold Soul Silver sets, excluding Call of Legends. So I think they're really nice. I always really like primes. Primes are also very playable. Almost like all of them were really playable cards. So if you're looking for 10 populations, they'll probably be extremely low. Graded Gem will tell you that for certain. I think they're cool collector cards. I really like the look of primes, the zoomed in like face with a dark shadow. I think they're just like really awesome, and you don't really see that approach on Pokemon very often. I don't think they're comparable to Amazing Rares, even though they have that similar like pull rate. Like you could say the same thing about like Prism Star cards, and no one has any appeal for Prism Star cards, and because not many of them look cool, and there's a ton of like stadiums and stuff like that, which is more on the player side, whereas Amazing Rares are more on that collector side instead, whereas primes were kind of fashion and function at the time, which is cool. They look good, but they're also super playable. But I don't necessarily like put them against one another in any way. I don't think they'll act similarly at all. So yeah,
I think people are falling for the low pop reports right now on primes, and even more so than level X's, but also definitely for level X's. These are both cards that they're going to be a lot more graded. They're too expensive as compared to WotC. That's my problem with them. I think that they're benefiting a lot from the crazy irrational growth in Modern, and so people understandably are like, and I own a lot of primes, so them going up makes me a lot of money. So it's not a because I liked them too, Joe. I view them as similar to the level X's in terms of like when I was collecting the level X's, the primes, the secret rare shinings from Black and White, and like the Plasma Storm, and Plasma Blast, those secret rares, all at the same time. So I felt them all kind of a similar appeal to me. So I think they're definitely great. I just don't think we're there in Pokemon yet that these things should. This is my personal opinion, that these things should be garnering. I might be wrong about this, but I think I saw the Mew in PSA 10 sell for over $1,000, already. It's just like, that card was $50. It's just, if that's greater growth than most vintage, like WotC stuff we've seen, in terms of percentage. And it just feels highly speculative, highly based on people seeing those low PSA pops, thinking that there are only 50 in the world of that, when really just it was going for $50 forever. So people didn't have the incentive to grade it. It is possible that there just aren't that many gem mint ones in the world. I really don't know this is definitely an area. I didn't open those packs. I wasn't in Pokemon during that time period, but just from what I've talked to with people, it's like there shouldn't be like none of it. Like,
absolutely.
These were things in Walmart. These were extremely mass produced items that there should be a lot out in the world. And, I think that, again, it's this type of thing of like, if vintage gets to the point where we have vintage things selling for millions of dollars, like comic books, then it's like a few $1,000s for these Prime cards or level X cards. Like, that makes sense to me in the scope of Pokemon. But it's like right now, it's just my opinion. It just seems, and again, I will make more money because I have more of these things because they were so cheap and easy to get. And that's my concern. I went as hard as I could after the WotC stuff, but you just couldn't, it was so much easier to buy 1,000 level X's and Primes than it was to load up on the WotC when I got in. So I don't know. What do you think?
Population does not matter on those. You shouldn't even look at the pop report for those cards because until 2019, there was literally no incentive to have them unless you wanted them for yourself. And there's nothing stopping you keeping the cards you want for yourself in a binder at that point, right? Unless you prefer displaying them in cases, which obviously a lot of people do. That's why there's sometimes a want to have them graded. But yeah, you shouldn't really look at the pop reports for any of those cards. I mean, just look at, I don't know, like a Gold Star Charizard and how much more difficult that card is to pull compared to every other Prime in an era that is probably less of them out there in the world than the Heart Gold Soul Silver series. It should tell you that, even a card that has a, like a 1 in 3 box pull rate, something like that for a Gold Star. And then there's however many there were in, was it Dragon Frontiers for the Charizard? I can't remember. But there are like thousands still in the pop report for a Gold Star. So just because you see like sub 100 of a Prime doesn't mean it's actually like a sub 100 pop. It's just that there was no reason to grade this card until like this year or in 2020, and people haven't got their cards back. So yeah, the pop report is basically a lie on a ton of eras in Pokemon right now because there's just been no incentive to until modern era.
Yeah, and the most common argument I hear back from people who are very bullish on this, they say, but there are millions of Pokemon collectors, so there'll be enough to eat up all that supply. And it's like, that may be true, but then the vintage should be even that much more expensive, we would think, because there's going to be millions of people wanting 60 cards, in the world, or 120 cards, or if the pop's double, depending on the card, obviously, and so it doesn't make sense. So again, the only argument is a subjective one then of like vintage sucks and primes are the best, or something like that. And that's a bit trouble. But going to your question, Swami, about comparing it to Vivid Voltage, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how much Pokemon prints these sets, if they come back to them, if they weren't able to print enough in the first go around, if they do reprints on some of these things, they may not. I really like the Amazing Rares. I think that they're really beautiful cards. They really stood out to me subjectively. I'm gonna own PSA 10 versions if I'm gonna grade them myself because you can buy them so much. Don't spend, buy these cards ungraded right now. Again, the grading mania. It's like you can save like $150 dollars at least by just buying them yourself. Just having a good eye for which ones will likely be a 10. And if you get, buy a few, grade them, sell the 9s, I'm sure the 9s will break even, on you at least. I mean, right now they'd probably quadruple your money, but they'd probably break even. And I don't think those cards are likely to get below a 9 fresh out of pack. I know there have been some issues with them, but
yeah, you'd be unfortunate too. Yeah. For the vast majority of the ones you get raw.
Yeah.
If you actually take care and look at the cards in the first place. Yeah.
Yep. So
interesting. Do you care about the Zamazenta and those sorts of cards? Because I mean, I have an attachment to those cards because I play the TCG and I played the video game, but I know that you're not really a player and not haven't played the most recent video game. Do you care about Zacian Zamazenta and what else is there? The Raikou and the Celebi, or would you only really care about Jirachi and Ray?
You mean about the Pokemon themselves? Do I like them? Not those cards, but you're talking specifically the Vivid Voltage ones?
As Amazing Rares.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like the gold cards, the first Zamazenta, like I think those were underrated because those are the first ever like really cool chase cards of those Pokemon from a new era. And I think that they are very well designed, cool Pokemon. And I think that kids are going to be connected to those who are playing this game right now.
Sure.
So I think those are really good cards. And the pull rates on those weren't the easiest to pull. I'm not exactly sure the pull rates offhand. You know, certainly harder to pull than these amazing rares. To pull those 2 gold cards. So yeah. So do I like them? Yeah. I mean, I think for me, it has a lot to do with the design of the Pokemon, whether or not I like it. I think those Pokemon connect me very much to like Raikou, Entei, Suicune, like immediately, right? I see those and I'm like, oh, that's a Pokemon. When I see like the beetle, the Orbeetle, I just see a beetle, to be complete, but again, like Diglett's ridiculous. Like it's all subjective, and I love Diglett because I played Diglett like crazy. And I remember exactly when I caught Diglett and tried to get him into Dugtrio and finally was able to catch a Dugtrio with my first great ball, and was like super excited to have a Pokemon that was like level 29, right? I had played these games into the ground. So, you're going to have those types of connections. Kids today are going to have those connections. They're going to remember the level at which they were and they caught that and those experiences that I won't have with the Beetle. Right. So that's where, but at the same time,
Beetle's one of the more popular Pokemon from that gen as well.
There you go. And I'm picking on the Beetle. Really, who I should pick on is like the Creamy, Alcremie, and the desserts, the dessert Pokemon. They're getting, but again, totally subjective. People will have connections to those Pokemon as long as the franchise stays alive and kids play them. I'm not convinced that kids are as connected to Pokemon today as we were. I think that, they have so many video games and so many options when, it's a completely different time period. There's so many fun things for them to do. Pokemon was a revelation you have to remember, guys. Like it was like that video game was like an incredible revelation. When you compare like, they could play Sword and Shield, but they could also play like a million other great video games that look amazing, And so that I think that it's a bit different.
It was literally like our first exposure to a ton of our first exposure of any video game for a ton of people. Like for me, it was like Mario Kart and Pokemon were like the first 2 video games I played, like period. And I would only play those. And that's exactly not the case for Pokemon in the modern day because there's everything else thrown at them in the mix.
Yeah, and so that kind of fervor that I remember exactly which room I was sitting in when I caught each Pokemon for the first time. Like you have to understand the mania of Pokemon and how connected it was to people's lives and stored into is it going to be the same for them? Yeah.
Interesting.
That type of stuff. So, I can go another like 11 minutes. Sorry to cut us off a little bit short.
It's all on you.
Does that sound good, Joe?
Yeah.
And definitely going to have Joe on again as long as he's willing to come back.
I'll be in the chat anyway.
He'll be in the chat anyway. He'll be hanging out. So for the last 11 minutes, guys, if you guys have any more questions you want to, if you've already asked it, please, you can definitely ask it again at the bottom. I'm going to skim up and look for some questions. Getting some questions on PSA and CGC. I feel like we've talked quite a bit, not today, but just like on the channel in general about that. So Kenny asks, and the good question that I just don't have an answer to, do you think it's better to buy graded PSA cards or buy raw cards to grade to send to PSA with how long turnaround times are for investing? So long-term investing, 100%, because think about it, right? Like it doesn't matter if it takes a year and a half. Like it stinks to be away to not have the card because you can't enjoy it. Like that's the tough part. But as far as an investment, if you believe in these Vivid Voltage Amazing Rares, if you can put like only $25 into one of them, grading fees included, versus buying it for $200, or $150, it puts you in such a much better shape, even if you have to wait, a year and a half to get that back. Where it becomes really difficult is for people who are looking for, shorter time horizons in terms of flipping and selling. And then, it's literally a math game based on like your specific situation, the specific card. There's a lot of risk in the market. That's my thoughts on that. What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, exactly the same.
Pretty much. Yeah. There just isn't, unfortunately, a good, easy answer. Like, and, everyone's in the same boat and feels frustrated too.
Max is asking about WB creator cards. What are our thoughts on them?
What are your thoughts on those? Poke.
I love them. I have a sealed WP creator pack.
Nice.
Love those cards. I think apart from the Wurmple, some really popular species in there. I think the Pikachu looks great. I mean, there's a ton of competition for getting a cool promo of a Pikachu, but I think it's always nice to have that in the pack. I think it's a really interesting artworks on them. The Mudkip looks incredible. The Torchic is like on fire, and they all have their own identity, and they're all goofy and fun. I think they're really nice cards.
I remembered them from when I was a kid.
Oh, interesting.
That there was this not ever seeing one. When I was a kid, it was like an elusive thing that I remember hearing about because I watched like WB and they talked about it on the WB show. So I have an actual connection to them from when I was a kid. I didn't know what they looked like, but I just remembered the rare cards were, and then I heard about, or I can't remember if I heard or didn't hear about the snap cards as a kid. I have this, I know I heard about the WB Pokecard creator, but I may have thought those were the snap ones and thought they were rarer than they actually were. I don't know, but that's my first connection with those. I remember like an idiot staring at these things on eBay, those packs of the packs and being like, Jake, buy the pack. It's like, I don't know, it's like $400, $500, $600. And I was like, buy out the packs, Jake. Like, and they're awesome. They look amazing. And the cards inside are fantastic. And you get all of the you get all, and I was like, buy the pack, Jake. And I never bought it. I never pulled the trigger on them. And so that's one of my definite regrets to not buy. I don't have too many regrets. I'm very lucky. That was one of them, was to not buy that. And I did manage to get 3 of them in PSA graded condition before I bought one kind of after things started going up. Have not completed it. Never got the Pikachu, which is not my favorite art. I love
that's
the one you love.
But the Trico is so goofy that I like it. Just brings a massive smile to my face. It looks ridiculous.
Yeah, it's not my favorite art on the Pikachu. The rest I really like. I really like the Torch. I really like the Torchic. Really like the Mudkip. Really like the Trico. Love all those cards. Something about the Pikachu, I don't know why.
It's got strange ratios, the Pikachu. It's like a Mighty Bean kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It just
like the colors though.
It doesn't feel like a Pikachu card to me. There's something because it's not cute, maybe. Like there's something about Pikachu that I expect something from that I like I don't see a Pikachu card there. I don't know why.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah. And so I think that affected, like, it just didn't feel like I want to pay the Pikachu premium for that. It doesn't feel like a Pikachu premium card. Yeah, and that's just stuff as a collector, I think, that you got to feel out for yourself. But definitely, I wanted the 3 that I wanted were the starters.
And, so weird that Wurmple made it in there, but he did.
Yeah, that was the first one I managed to get, of course. And and that's I think my only PSA 10 one, and I got a really good deal on it's Wurmple.
Awesome.
I got a really good deal on that one, but bug Pokemon are awesome. Okay, first of all, guys, stop hating on bug Pokemon, and they're very strong. They're so bad in the game. They destroyed that whole like bug Pokemon were so bad in the game that like they just destroy their collectability and enjoyment. Let's see what else we got here. So I'm saying thoughts on Scream. So we talked about this Scream kind of earlier. We kind of touched on that. I know it's a long stream, so it's sorry, but we basically just said that we liked it.
Yeah. They're cool.
Yeah. What do you guys think of, Derek Harshberger asked, what do you guys think of One Punch Man? And the TCG, I didn't know there was a One Punch Man
I also
TCG.
I did not know there was a TCG.
There you go.
The anime
I do know One Punch Man. I've watched
very
it.
playful and fun. Yeah, I enjoy that.
Oh my god, the second season though, I could not follow what the heck was going on. I was watching it with my roommate. The first season I absolutely loved, and the second season I was like, when we saw the last episode, I was like, did it end? Was that oh, okay. I watched every episode and I'm trying to think about, don't want to spoil it, I guess, but I'm trying to think about like what was happening and what kind of like morality, what is the purpose and meaning, because like the first season is all just about like how hilarious it is, like when people take themselves so seriously and they're actually like pathetic and puny and tiny. And that's just like amazing to see just over and over again. But yeah, the second season with like the bad guy or whatever character, like what?
Yeah,
we don't
direction for sure.
Yeah, we don't have to like ruin it for people, I guess, who still might want to watch it. But
it's definitely easy viewing, fun anime.
Yeah,
for sure.
Do you watch a lot of anime, Joe?
Define a lot.
Yeah, that's like what's going through my mind. Have you seen every episode of Naruto? Yes. Okay, so I would say that's a lot.
There's animes that I love, very strongly, but anime is so ridiculously broad that if you say you like anime, someone's gonna one up you and say, "Yeah, but do you really like anime?"
To that person, I'd be like, "I don't think, probably not." You've seen some things that I probably. I really like
Death Note is one of my favorite animes. That's a really.
I was about to say that.
Great.
That's hilarious. I was going to say Death Note too, right as you were saying that. Yeah, Death Note. I recently watched Death Note for the second time. One of the few.
I'm like 8 times through.
One of the few animes I've watched twice. Yeah, and
the first time I watched it, I had to binge it because I was genuinely like in my chair, like, oh my god, what? How is he going to get out of this kind of thing?
So clever. It's like such a great. I mean,
and when I first
thing about anime, I
first heard about Death Note and I heard the premise and I was like, this sounds so dumb. This is going to be overhyped. And then I was just like, I was in. It was great.
Yeah. The thing about anime is like they're so creative. Like a lot of these shows, the premises, there's nothing else. There's no other that I know kind of, American television, touching on some of these ideas and premises. It's just like so much more interesting to me. And I love, and it's so psychological. So obviously that's like way up my alley. Like, so a lot of anime is like very psychological. There's obviously like very playful, silly, crazy, there's all sorts of anime obviously, but, and I am not an anime scholar, whatever. People who know so much about everything. But I really enjoy it. And I think too, just like a lot of it becoming available on things like Netflix and these other streaming platforms, I've been able to watch a lot of it in the last like couple of years that I never knew about or watched. And the ones that I mainly watched were like the ones on like Cartoon Network, like, Dragon Ball Z, Kenshin, Rurouni Kenshin, like those were on there a lot when I was growing up. All right, guys. Who wants the last question of today? Anyone got a question?
Cheers, Greater Gem. See you guys.
Are you seeing any questions at the bottom? I'm scrolling up looking for one.
I had a quick one from Jose. I can just answer this quickly. What do I think about the future for Worlds? Is there a possibility it will be online? I would say very low possibility it will be online. Also very low possibility there'll be a Worlds 2021. I imagine it will be pushed back to 22 is my instinct. And I think it's most likely going to be continual Players' Cup style events online until real tournaments come back.
Here's an interesting question for us to talk about. Kevin Torres asks, what are your thoughts on if 90% of Pokemon characters went down significantly in value? How would that affect the hobby? Very interesting.
Well, there's already a ton of premiums on really popular species. It probably is about only the top 10% of species actually have a big premium. So I wouldn't be surprised if a lot did go down. There's a ton of people that collect Pokemon that only know the names of Gen 1 Pokemon, and they sift through the pack and say, oh, hey, that's a Diglett, and then throw the Drillbur away and throw all the Woobats and those sorts of things to the bin. So there's definitely a huge disparity. I could see that gap growing between species. Honestly, I think I'm surprised that there's not a bigger gap in a lot of respects, to be honest. I could see that happening going forward, but I think the 151 Pokemon, for the most part, would likely going to be safer because they all have a nostalgic identity, I would like to argue. And then it's cherry picking some of the coolest or most iconic from other years, I would say. But the strange thing about Pokemon is everyone has a different favorite Pokemon, and everyone has a story about such random Pokemon, and that can be their childhood. Their little slice of childhood is this one story about this one cave where they found this one Pokemon, and it's I don't know how that can stick for so many people, but Pokemon's just found a way to do that. So I think there are premiums, and those premiums potentially could grow for the most popular ones. But I just think there is such a crazy diverse pool of Pokemon that people love for no logical reason. They just love it, So that's a strange thing with Pokemon.
I think it's such a great question because we are not sports where they have stats and accomplishments. Yeah. And these are real people who go out there and who made it into the Hall of Fame. There isn't a Hall of Fame of Pokemon, right? And so it adds a lot more of that subjective element. What I would say is that I actually think that there is a exaggeration of certain Pokemon's prices right now.
I mean,
because there are a lot of people in the market who aren't collectors and don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And so they, of course, are going to buy Charizard because that's the only one they know. They don't have connections to anything. So when the market is almost all collectors, you're going to see a more even distribution, I think, of what people really like and want, because someone like me, I would never spend $360,000 on a PSA 10 first edition Charizard when I could spread that money over a lot of my favorite Pokemons and get a lower graded Charizard. And other collectors, for the vast majority of us, will probably feel the same way. I think that having that, but a pure sort of investor, speculator, flipper might be and this is all speculation, but might be that's the card I feel most comfortable, safest. That's the one that I think has the attention. That's the Michael Jordan. That's what I understand. I can really only understand base set. I can really only understand, a few hollows, when you hear Gary Vee talking about Pokemon, right? Sure. He says 5 things and it's that, right? And I think there are a certain amount of people who are buying some into the space with a lot of money who have that amount of knowledge and are going after those cards that have really proven themselves. I think that makes sense, but I think it also creates an artificial high price on certain things that wouldn't be there if the market goes back to a time where it's predominantly people buying cards for what they love and what they like. I think you'll see, because I just don't buy that people like some of these things, and I pick on that too much because that's enough. I mean, that's the cornerstone of our hobby. Don't get me wrong. But again, we're talking $360,000 versus $300 for a lot of cards. I mean, that's a staggeringly different amount of money. So people have to keep in mind what I'm saying here. And I love Charizard, and I love that card. It's a very important card to my childhood. Yeah. So, this isn't I take a look at Charizard and I'm like, what? Stupid Pokemon that no one ever wanted, and I hated as a kid. It was no, we all
right? Yeah,
we all desperately wanted that card, and on the playground, and although interestingly, the card I wanted the most, Chansey, because it was the last one.
Strange.
I was more interested in completing the set. I had all 15 hollows except the Chansey, and the Chansey was the one I could never get. So I have a connection to that card from that memory, and so I think that as time goes on, because we don't have stats, we don't have clearly Michael Jordan's Michael Jordan because of what he accomplished and what he did, and the numbers, and he should be, and people in the sports card world, they argue, or they say this card has this value because of the stats that this person did, or how long they've been doing it, or this or that. And I'm going to predict what's going to happen based on that. We're just I like that Pokemon. I like this Pokemon. This is the best Pokemon. This one should be the best. It's a lot more open, So because of that, whereas with sports, I would think that would be much more natural, where it would be like the vast majority would have zero value, and only because there's so many players and they cycle through these leagues so much that and everyone would want the same 10 players. I don't think it's that extreme in Pokemon.
No.
And I think it might be a bit inflated right now. And I agree with you, but I don't know. But I agree with you that the 151, even second generation, like there are so many Pokemon commons and uncommons, people feel connections to these things. These are not like the guy who sat on the bench of like a team that no one even knows that guy's name, right? Everyone knows the name of all of these Pokemon and can say them easily and has relationships to them and have used them in the game. Whereas no one's ever seen that guy play in the G League, who came up for one NBA game, so it's a different sort of thing. It's really interesting, interesting conversation.
And when people just flippantly throw out names, like ZNG always says Poliwrath, and I think Scott in a recent video threw out like Hoppip, and then like there's people up in arms like, how dare you?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I started that I think I started the Poliwrath when he said it in one video, and I was just like, dude, like
Poliwrath saved Red from drowning.
I love Poliwrath.
What more do you want, man?
Yeah, you're hating on like one of my like childhood friends. Like that's literally what it feels like. It's so ridiculous, but it's true. And I think that is what has caused the genuine fervor and mania, is how much people really love it and those memories and connections. But there's a lot of other stuff that's happened and a lot of other stuff going on too. So any last thoughts for today, Joe, before we end?
No, I think we've covered a lot today. Some good people asking a ton of questions. Sorry that we didn't get to everyone. It's always the nature of these things, but thanks for everyone who stuck around to listen to us.
Yes. Thank you so much, guys. I know I always miss so many questions and we kind of go all over the place, and, hopefully this Patreon idea, for those who missed it in the beginning, I'll just say it one more time. I'm starting a Patreon on the channel. It will be for right now. I haven't even done it yet. So I think I can do this. If I can't do this, just more embarrassing internet struggles in public, which is like basically the brand of the channel at this point. And I embrace it. It's fine.
Oh man.
But I'm planning on just doing all donations, at least for now, at least to start. And as long as like enough people donate, honestly, that's just what I would want. That would be my ideal forever. Is to just do pure donations forever. And the perk that I'm going to give people who decide to donate, is that they'll be able to ask their questions to me beforehand. I'll be able to see your questions and I'll be able to prepare a little bit more. This is all just like off the top of our heads, right? If you send me the questions, I might be able to actually prepare a little bit. I will combine questions that are the same theme to make sure that you get yours answered, type of stuff. But I think
would also help though. You'd see the volume of one question coming in to know how important it is to answer one question, because you've got the same question 10 times, right?
Because if like 50 people decide to donate, or whoever many, if they all ask the same question, I'm not going to like read each one of their questions, but we'll combine them. And I hope that is a way for me to make some return, some money off of like the amount of time. And it'll also kind of inspire me and motivate me to keep going, while also keeping this channel like very, very affordable, very free. And what I said earlier, I want to say it again now, please do not donate if it would stress you out in any sort of financial way to donate, even $1. Okay. Please, you do not have to. We love having you here. It should feel good to donate. It should feel like you're helping the channel grow. You're encouraging the message here. That's what I'm looking for people to donate, not out of a sense of guilt or obligation or stress, or like I'm not going to like you or I'm not going to engage with you because of that. There will be no favorites played for money here. Okay. So again, thank you so much to my guest, Joe. Everyone, please give him big thanks. Please go subscribe to his channel, like his videos, send him checks and your cards directly to his house.
This is where I put my PO box.
Yeah. What cards do you want people to send? Yeah. But he's a great dude. He honestly, I view Joe as like a pillar, one of,
Thank you.
of the Pokemon
Appreciate
community, certainly, of the player space. And, and I want to, I want to check out some of your videos where you're doing some more of that. Do you have videos where you're like at Worlds doing commentary at Worlds?
So there's tons of footage you can see of me for international championships, but not for Worlds.
But international, I could find it. Is that on your channel, or is that?
It's on the official Pokemon channel.
Okay, cool. I want to check that out. So yeah, check Joe out in his element, doing his commentary, his play-by-play of the matches.
Yeah, if you go onto the Pokemon Twitch as well, you'll be able to find it all on there. They keep everything from Twitch. They stream it live on Twitch, all the tournaments, and you'll probably be able to hear and see me there. I'm suited and booted most of the time. The most recent ones they've done are Players Cup ones, which I'm sat literally in this chair with this exact same backdrop, so it'll be easy to find because it's all online tournaments that they've done. But yeah, for the official streams is what I commentate.
Thank you to Joe. Thank you to everyone here today, and we'll all be back here next Sunday, including Joe. It sounds like in the
I'll be in
if
chat,
he's free
guys.
in chat. Back to chat, you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God! All right, man. Good to see you. Thank you, everyone, and see you all next week.
Cheers.